Well, that's about par for the course for my day so far. Don't adjust your streaming screens, although perhaps adjust your expectations. It is I, Krisis, and I'm here with a special midweek pull list stream. Although if you're watching this in the future, that has no meaning. But if you're watching it right now, it's because we have a lot of pull lists to catch up on. I'm a few weeks behind, so I'm here on not one of my normal days, but still, don't adjust your streaming screens. And as we all, streams, it's going to be one of those days. So as we all know, I start off first by revealing what my face looks like by putting on my glasses, and then of course going straight to my power ranking of the top series of 2025 so far. Then we talk about my picks of the week, what I thought they would be and what they turned out to be, and then finally we will get into a moment of crisis, and then we will get into my opinions of the comics of May 21st, 2025. So let's talk about my top series of 2025, my top 12. Here we go. We start with a re-entry into the top 12, which we're going to talk about this week. It is Bug Wars from Jason Aaron. Then a new entry, I don't think we've seen it before in my top 12, which is Out of Alcatraz by Christopher Cantwell and Tyler Crook. At number 10, we still have Persisting Ghost Box from Comixology Originals. You can read it if you have Amazon Prime. Then Jump Scare from Cullen Bunn and Danny Luckert. Detective Comics, I think, has inched up a spot because this new issue we're going to talk about this week was so good. Then we have some familiar faces. Solomon Kane from Titan Comics. The Tin Can Society from Grimm Giant Generator, that's written by Peter Warren with art from Francesco Mosley. We have Nice House by the Sea, which persists as my entire personality. I'm giving you all a rest from it, but in my personal life, everybody's still hearing about it. And then we have Doctor Strange of Asgard, which I talked about on last week's pull, Batman Dark Patterns, The Avengers, and at number 1 still, until something else comes to supplant it, which may never, is FML from Kelly Sue DeConnick, David Lopez, Chris Peter, and Clayton Cowles. So that is my comic series power ranking of this year so far. But let's talk about this week's top picks, both what I thought they would be and then what they turned out to be. So for DC, my top pick I assumed was going to be Detective Comics because I've been loving this Tom Taylor run so much. And no surprise at all, it actually was Detective Comics, although there were a lot of good books from DC this week, which we're going to talk about. My Marvel pick of the week I thought was Amazing Spider-Man. I've been really vibing with this Joe Kelly, Pepe Larra's Spider-Man run. I really thought it was just going to continue killing me every other week as it has been. Narrowly, and there was actually another book I almost put in here, but Moon Knight, this issue was an achievement of artistic merit, and we will talk about that. I barely could choose the screenshots for it because it is so gorgeous. From Image, I thought my pick would be Rogue Sun. I've been really vibing with this series in the Massive Verse, and I did really like this series, but Bug Wars. This issue of Bug Wars was just everything I've been wanting from the series. It really, really delivered. And then finally, Indie, I assumed it would be Out of Alcatraz, and I loved this issue. It was almost perfect. There's a reason it's in my top 12, but surprising me and possibly everyone on the planet Earth, I was so obsessed with this comic book, Robo-Wolf. When I make the screenshots as I go, as I read the comic to make sure I'm going to have this all ready for you. And when I got to the end, I realized 24 story pages. That is how obsessed I was with the internal arts. I cannot wait to talk to you about Robo-Wolf. So now let's do some brief hellos. I know this is not a normal time that I stream, so I know we won't have the full everybody, although maybe some people who aren't usually around on a Sunday are around today. So let's see. Bunkmaster B got his first comment comic drink in, and it's not even at Heroes Con this time. So many of you were at Heroes Con over the weekend. Hello to Hank, who's saying it's a great surprise in that Moment of Crisis, courtesy of Raptor Rancher on this last stream, really got Hank thinking about their physical collection. And it certainly did for me as well. It's really been on my mind all week. Great suggestion from Raptor Rancher. Mall 360 saying hello to you, Mall, one of our regulars. Logan Wayne is here. Bonus, let's go, as is Kevin Cork. Hello to you. Patrick Borgeld is here saying yay, wow, another stream. Super Jop is a Wednesday crisis. Look, if you're me, every day is a crisis day, but for you, you're having a Wednesday crisis. And also, with a wry comment, may have inspired today's Moment of Crisis. See, comics used to be way better than they are now. Edwin Billiot is here. As he says, the only way I'm going to catch up is doing 2 a week. And I would have to do 2 a week for 5 weeks, which might kill me. I'm not used to reading comic books in the middle of the week. Comic books for me are like a very Thursday through Sunday affair, and lately anyway, even though I read so many on those days that it actually kind of spreads out and makes up for not reading the other days. But I was feverishly reading comics on a Monday and a Tuesday this week, and so I'm just totally flipped upside down life in the wrong order. Jarn Paul's saying, I'm not beating the doping allegations. I wish I could have some doping allegations, but they don't sell any good decongestion over the counter here in New Zealand, so I can't even get any good doping allegations. Ryan Bragg, hello to you, my friend. Helen, a lovely surprise to see me, a lovely surprise to see you, Helen. A Fifth of Jack Gaming, wondering if he can wiggle this puppy into his schedule. Stoops is going to miss it, but I'm sure we'll catch it on the replay. James Abel has got the popcorn out. And let's see, and Cool Angel will only be able to catch the first hour or show. And for this week, Cool Angel has only read Zatanna. Javier Hernandez is here, made it to another show on time, and Bunkmaster's on time. I was not. The hair and makeup team might be fired. It was a long process today, and the blush went on very approximately. So I'm getting my first look at it right now because I am growing increasingly blind without these glasses. Jarn says, just drop all the Star Wars books. You'll be updated today in no time. But guess what? One of the Star Wars books, after getting a talking to last month, was very close to being my pick of the week. Earth's Geomancer's here, starting a work meeting in a few. Wish I could watch this instead. Greetings from Los Angeles. Says Murph saying hello. Oh, Miss Sasmurph. Hold on, we're coming right back, Lewis. Says Lewis M, a Crisis stream on a new comic book day. Oh yeah, that's true. I don't think about that. I didn't think about that. It's actually New Comic Day. Well, we're weeks away from that concern. Lars Pinot Noir of Choice is here. Kyle the Mighty. Wait, today's Sunday? Am I not supposed to work? Feel free to take off work. Tell them Crisis said you could. Richard Fearing is here. Anime saying, yay, that I'm on. Queen Cognito, who I've had such a smile on my face reconnecting with recently on the Near Mint Condition Discord. We are both veterans of the Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men Discord circa 2018, and it's really fun to see those people still in the community. One Wheelchair X is another one of the people that I am friends with from that era. Renee Spawn is here. There's a very good Spawn book this week that almost was my image pick of the week. Oh my gosh, you all just keep saying low. And Reaper's here. Did New Zealand get that low pressure system last night? The weather was just wild in general yesterday in New Zealand. It was really, really wild. Thoughts on Daredevil by Zdarsky, says Electric X Alpha. Do I own it? Well, as we know, I don't own anything physical from Marvel or DC after 2015. However, I absolutely love Daredevil by Zdarsky. I think in micro, it got a little slow here and there, but in macro, it was a brilliant run. A brilliant arc of comic books, beautiful artwork by Marco Cacchetto, who draws this hair. And I loved it. And Min is pretty late here in France, but we'll catch on the replay. Well, bonsoir, and have a nice night of sleep to you. Min, I'm glad that I got your comment on the last stream while you were still in the stream. I was really convinced you would have been gone by then, so I was really happy. I got it. Okay, so I'm going to do a Moment of Krisis, and then we're going to do a brief AMA. I know I always say brief, but at some point, some of these have to come in under 3 hours, because there are 50 comic books to talk about today. So here's the Moment of Krisis, inspired by regular viewer Super Jop, who made a comedic comment, drink, when I say comics instead of comments, that I was saying this has been, by far, my favorite week of Marvel Comics so far this whole year. And Job was like, no, that's impossible. We all know the comics were better before. And that's often a mantra in comics. They were better before. I liked them better before. And I really want to just take a moment to unpack that, because I strive to not feel that way. We're always going to have nostalgia from the comics from before and love them very much. But I want to read my new favorite comic today. And I sometimes wonder if a lot of readers feel that way. Like, are they trying to read their new favorite comic book today? I don't know if they are. But this is not just about comics, right? It's about music, it's about movies, it's about fashion. There have been studies done that people's interest and love of new music peaks at certain times in their lives. And it's a spectrum. It doesn't hit a certain date, but for some people it's in high school. For many people it's in their 20s up until their late 20s. And then as you get into their 30s, their love of new music dwindles and dwindles. And usually people who are in their 40s or even late 30s, they don't think music is as great anymore. Make music great again. And so a lot of people have that opinion about comics as well. Why is that? Well, part of it is that, when we get hit with stuff in our formative years, not only formative for us as human beings, but formative for us in a hobby, in an interest, those things imprint on us, right? The first great comic we read is always going to be really, really great. Our first favorite album is always going to be a nostalgic favorite for us. Later, we might learn more critical skills and more self-awareness that makes us look back at that Limp Bizkit album and say, maybe that wasn't one of the best albums I've ever heard of all time. I said some embarrassing stuff in the 90s about artists that I thought were the best artist or the best guitarist, and I look back now and I cringe pretty hard at that. But that was who I was in the 90s, and those were my favorites. And even though I cringe at the opinions I expressed in the 90s, they still remain my favorites. But I think for comic books, because so many people don't understand how to approach comic books critically, and that's not meant to be a really withering critique. It's just part of the problem with comics is that people don't interrogate them. They just kind of flip through them. They like the art that they like. They don't ask why they like it. They like the writing they like. They don't ask why. They have no engagement with the colors or letters. And I know I'm not talking to any of you crushers. You all know a lot about this because we have this ongoing discourse about it every week. I'm talking about all those other people. But just in general, I think that part of that fixation on they were better before has to do if you've read something early and it imprinted on you early and it was your model, your platonic ideal for what the best thing was, and then you didn't necessarily learn any discernment that's going to change your mind. And I'm not saying people who say comics were better before have no taste. I'm not saying they don't understand comics. I'm saying that is one of a spectrum of reasons that we tend to think the older things are better, right? And so there's that. There's, there were in comics, there were creators that we loved at that time that might not be making comic books anymore. So that's an aspect of it. In comics, there are eras of art styles. We might have really liked an art style from an earlier era that is not being repeated too often right now. For me, you often hear me express that when I say I like flat colors. I don't like colors that have a lot of shine like these glossy lips. I want to see it look flat on the page. That's not the coloring style now. So of course, if I read a comic that was colored in 1993, I'm going to like the colors in that comic better. That is just my personal preference. But I think people also forget that narrative preferences and narrative approaches have also changed, right? So some of us really like caption boxes because we grew up reading comics that had caption boxes from the 1980s. They're not as much a thing anymore. It's seen as like, oh, this one's got a lot of narration when that used to be the norm. Same for thought balloons. Not a lot of superhero comics especially don't have thought balloons anymore, which means there's no more interiority for the characters. So to us, we're like, whoa, characters feel so plain and flat now. But to a reader who just started reading after thought balloons went out of vogue in the early 2000s, if they get a comic book with thought balloons now, and this is not just me making up a straw man, I've seen these comments, they're like, it felt really overwritten. And so I think the thing is there's no platonic ideal of a perfect comic book. Any comic book that somebody holds out as perfect, I might think is crap, and often do. That's why people think I have hot takes. So because there's no perfection, it's not like in music, even if somebody has perfect pitch and a perfect voice that is, and plays perfectly on the beat and the rhythms in the pocket, it doesn't mean it was the best song necessarily. It just means it was performed well, and the same is true for comic books. So those are the variety of reasons we might feel that way. But now I want to talk about loving things in the present, because I really do try to love things in the present in my whole life, but especially in comic books. And I really hope and pray that I have not read the best year of comic books that I've read in my life yet. I always want the best year of comic books I'm going to read to be next year, right? Or at least sometimes for my greater good, the current year. And I think part of that is being open to new creators, being open to new techniques, understanding even if shiny, hyper-shaded, hyper-rendered colors aren't my favorite, what makes them good, right? So it's about constant interrogation, it's about having an open mind, and it's about not wanting a repeat of something that you've liked before. And I think that is something that sometimes distinguishes me a little bit. Not that I'm special in any way, but just that even with music, I'm always listening to new music. I'm like a shark. In getting ready for the show, I had on my favorite songs of 2024, not my favorite songs of the 80s or the 90s. I had my favorite songs of 6 to 12 months ago, right? And so because I am that personality, for me in comics, I am always looking for the next most delightful comic, and it's easy to please me. But I think for somebody who really was high off the supply of 90s X-Men or 90s Batman or 2000 Superman or, Walking Dead or Invincible, it's really, really hard when you're trying to find that comic again. And I think that's often why people are like, well, comics just aren't as good these days. Which is just such a weird, it's a whole art form. It's really hard for a whole art form to decline as a whole. And when you say that, it's kind of like, well, it's really hard for that to be a valid statement, really. Like, oh, all of comic books is work. Okay, sure. Now, I love data. I always say on Near Mint Condition when we do the polls, data or it didn't happen, which is a saying I have from a startup I used to work for. And I would say, I have said Marvel, I don't know if they've been this bad since the 90s. And the reason I say that is not just my fifis. It's because I rate every comic I read. I've tracked my ratings for years now, and I can see the actual downturn of the curve. But that's just ratings, and ratings are just subjective, and I could just be in a bad mood and be giving everything a 0.5 out of 5 that week. So even my ratings are not objective truth, but they're slightly less subjective than just going, I feel in the air that the comics are worse than they've ever been before. So no, I don't tend to buy that comics have been worse than ever. I think there have been times that you can see a trend happening in comics that can lead to a slightly positive or negative reception on the whole. I would say one of those times for me, as I read over 50% of the entire industry, was immediately after the pandemic pause in 2020, but it wasn't really felt 2021. And that's because I think a lot of comics are about momentum. It's about editorial momentum. It's about storytelling momentum. It's about that constant pull, like writing the issue, writing the next slip, how many covers ahead you are, getting the mail from 2 issues ago. I don't think that's an ideal system, but I do think that creates a lot of the energy and the momentum in comic books. And I felt like when everything really spun back up, finished their existing arcs and then launched into a new arc or pivoted or tried something different after that, it really took a while for the energy to come back together, especially for comics that are edited, right? Because at a lot of indies, there are not line editors. People are just making their own comics, creator owned. If they hire an editor, that editor is mostly like taking a look at the consistency of the comic itself. They're not consulting on what the storyline should be necessarily. Or Todd McFarlane, I guess they just put their name on the issue. But at Marvel and DC, and also for some of the intellectual property that's managed, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or G.I. Joe or things like that, I did really feel a softening in that period. It didn't make me say, comics are not going to be good. It just made me say, you know what, right now, it seems like we're going through a little bit of a struggle for a few months. And I felt like I could identify that. Was I right? No, because there's no objective truth in art. So this is all to say that I never buy anybody whose opinion is that an art is not as good as it was when they were young. It's different. It's made differently. There are different ideals. There are different styles. There are different things in vogue. It's not the same as getting a washing machine, which doesn't last as long and is made of cheaper parts and is noisier, and saying this washing machine, they don't make them like they used to. That's objective reality. And I think we could say that about the physical printing of the comic books. We could say this paper's not as good. That's objective reality. But to just say the industry isn't as good, that's so dull and boring. And you know what? If you want to feel that way, and even if you're watching, if you want to feel that way, although I doubt that you are, because there's a pull list stream about brand new comics, so I assume you probably like new comics if you're watching this. But if you want to feel that way, there are more collections of classic comic books from every publisher than there have ever been before in the history of comic making. So guess what? This is a great time to not like new comics. You could go on not liking new comics and be as happy as you have ever been in your life reading the old comics, because they're actually available to you in updated and sometimes improved and expanded formats. But for those of us who are fighting the good fight as a new comic book day, Wednesday warriors, and it is a Wednesday today, which I'm behind by a month, I will say I am always hoping that the best Wednesday of new comic books is next Wednesday. And as the case may be, the Wednesday that I'm talking about today, which was Wednesday, May 21st, is one of the best Wednesdays, I think, of new comics that I've read in a long, long time. So let's start talking about it. First, we will do a brief Ask Me Anything. It seems as though you have made 42 comments while I was Moment of Krisising, which does not bode well for me in my timeline, but I'm very excited to read them. Blackbox Comics, okay, pause everything. Hold up. Blackbox Comics is making some badass comics right now. They're the ones who made Catabasis, which I was obsessed with. It was like Black Widow does a mission in limbo because she's working for heaven to ferry souls from hell. The art was absolutely gorgeous, and James Abel met the creator. I want to say his name is Daniel Braden, but I could be wrong. But he met him at Heroes Con, and I do not get FOMO'd that much about cons because I don't care. I just want to sit in this chair. That's my interest in the world. I had to go out last night and be in a room with people. Do you know how upsetting that was? Anyway, back to Blackbox Comics. I was so FOMO'd that because the creators I want to meet are not the creators from Big Two. They're the creators who are like carrying this thing on their back. They're the ones who are like self-pubbing, who came up with the idea on their own. Not to say that their creators aren't amazing at Big Two or at Image or whatever, but like I get hot to want to meet the creators that make the stuff that Blackbox Comics puts out. So, I'm so happy they're here. I absolutely did read Risk Numbers 2 this week. Spoilers, I loved it. And Devil's Dominion is my next one on my list. And I'll say for those of you who don't collect physical and read digital, all of their comics, or at least all the ones I've looked for so far, have been on Global Comics. And Global Comics, you can buy them there, but Global Comics is like $8 a month to subscribe. So if you just read 2 Blackbox comics a month on Global Comics, you will have paid for the subscription. So I love them. I would love to talk about every new Blackbox comics, and as long as they go up on Global Comics on time, I can. And if not, maybe they can send me some to review. Okay. Now let's, oh boy. Oh, so many comics and comments, Drink. Oh, sweet Jesus. What is the book next to my yellow epics? There's yellow epics here, which is Power Man and Iron Fist. I don't know what that means. What yellow epics? You're going to have to be more specific, Jarn. I'm not sure. Yes, Eric, it is a sneaky midweek stream. And hello for my friends at Omnibus Cafe. What's it, the no Marvel after 2015? Many of the regular viewers have seen me say this, so I won't go super in depth. But I had every Marvel trade from 2004 to 2015. When we got to Secret Wars, I didn't even know I was going to move to New Zealand, but I'm like, I don't need every trade. Because it's about... Every Marvel comic from Marvel Now, so from the end of 2012 to Secret Wars, is like 7 short boxes. And I looked at those 7 short boxes and I'm like, well, now I know, just collecting every physical Marvel trade is going to generate 7 short boxes every 3.5 years. And I did the math and I said, that can't keep happening. So I only buy digital since then, even if something is super rereadable. And as you know, I very rarely will accept an indie thing. After that, OG Bloodline Josh Perry, I have to say that what do I know about Magic? Magic the practice, Magic like how Grant Morrison does Magic the Gathering. I know a lot about Magic the Gathering. I know a medium amount about up close Magic. I really love watching Penn and Teller and their Magic show, and when they explain things. I had a really cool magician friend in Philadelphia who actually has talked about moving to New Zealand. I hope I'm not blowing up his spot. Francis Minotti, who's a brilliant magician and a really cool dude, and so check him out. So that's what I know about Magic. Penn and Teller, Francis Minotti, and Magic the Gathering. You'll have to ask a little bit more specifically if you want a more specific answer. Paul McGrew loved the first 25 issues of Zdarsky's Daredevil, which was his Batman run, was such a letdown. I hope his Captain America is good though. I keep I just have these moments in the middle of the day like, oh, Chip Zdarsky's about to write Captain America. Like, it just keeps dawning on me. So I'm really, really hoping it's good. Super Job comedic comic? More. No, never. You would never make a comedic. Do we like this new shirt? This is one of my new fashions. I have to do a haul around the world maybe next week because I have a really big box of comics just off screen and I'm just going to tease. I'm not going to show it to you. Okay? Here, it's coming up. Ready? Did you see what that was? That's going to be on haul around the world too. But I also got some new shirts because I know you're here primarily for my fashion. I usually mute it and just look at the shirts. I understand. Biff Bam Pow, the comic book podcast. My friend Johnny is saying hello and hello to you as well. If you haven't subscribed, you can get him on Spotify, although we're trying to not bully, just peer pressure. I'm going to start saying peer pressure instead of bully. We're trying to peer pressure him into putting more episodes on YouTube, like his conversation with Brian Bendis. Oh, like Doctor Strange movies. I watched them both. The first one I fell asleep a pretty impressive amount of times. I felt like it was rewarming Inception's dinner visually. But, Dr. Benedict Cumberbatch. Okay, sure. Cruel Angel. Yeah, I'm happily stuck in the 80s and earlier music-wise. I'm stuck everywhere music-wise. I could, there could be any decade and you could say, Krisis, you're only going to be able to listen to that decade for now. And I go, cool. I love doo-wop. Eventually I'll do some doo-wop show. All one of you will tune in. I have, I think, like 3,000 doo-wop tracks because every doo-wop box set that there's ever been, I have bought. So I could listen just to music from the 1950s for the rest of my life and be perfectly happy. But that's true for the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I just love music. Personally, I think everything past Devil's Reign, including the event itself, is a train wreck. Oh, David C., we're getting spicy on this Zdarsky Daredevil. I didn't know it was a Zdarsky Daredevil stream, but apparently the comments are taking it in that direction. Well, you know what? It's a run that a lot of people read and a lot of people have opinions about, which I think is interesting with Zdarsky. So many people read Zdarsky books that it's like, sometimes I feel like people get the perception that they suck, but it's like, well, no. The comic that people read the most have the most opinions about it. And so sometimes the book that's read the most, anything by Zdarsky, Spider-Man, Batman, sometimes they're the most negative opinions about that because the widest breadth of people have given it a chance. Because comics are such that people usually don't give things a chance if they don't think they're going to like them or be interested in them. So people will be like, oh, I heard Batman by Tynion sucked. I heard Batman by Zdarsky sucked. And I'm like, well, no. There's just more people who didn't like it that read it than would not read a typical comic that they might not like, which I'm not. Your opinion is your opinion, and it may be completely it could be objective or subjective truth. We have no way of knowing if it's objective truth, but it's your subjective truth. But I just think that's the nature of the beast. Yeah, we all read Zdarsky stuff because he's Chip Zdarsky, and so we have a wider range of opinions on Chip Zdarsky stuff. That's just life. Bung has to be on comics. I might be smirching the good name of Fred Durst and the genre of new metal. We all know that music peaked at the line, "You talking that spit, you'll be leaving with a fat lip." I will say, despite my endlessly voracious taste in music, I kind of totally missed new metal. I think I was into female singer-songwriters a lot in the 90s, and then I was starting to really get back into 80s stuff that I never had in my parents' vinyl collection. So I was like getting into like the Pretenders, even 70s like Joni Mitchell. And then also at the end of the 90s, I finally started listening to men. I was like, men, tell me about this gender. Do they sing? This is so interesting. Tell me about it. So I think a lot of my like, while new metal was happening, I was listening to like, and catching up on Elliott Smith, Weezer, Death Cab for Cutie. I was on Death Cab for Cutie from the beginning. I missed the first album, There's Something About Airplanes, but I think I onboarded on We Have the Facts and We're Voting Yes. So I was already like a massive fan of theirs by the time Photo album came around. So that's really what I was doing in terms of new music from like 1999 to 2002. And also getting into Rufus Wainwright. And because that was still the CD era, at least for me, I wasn't like a big, I don't even know what to say. Napster, I guess. I didn't really do that. So I was limited by my budget, so I had to be choosy. And so I mostly was like listening to that. Anyway, this was not your question. Reberg say, I'm nervous to go back and read the Ultimate Marvel comics as I don't want to ruin their memory in my mind. Oh, Reberg, that's the perfect sibling moment of crisis to the moment of crisis that I actually just did. Maybe we'll do that some other time as like revisiting things. And I do have to offer an amendment to that moment of crisis. I think now collected editions are letting people revisit things that they had not previously revisited. And so it's like people who watched a TV show that had never been in reruns and never had a DVD. And they're like, it was the best show ever, especially cartoons of our youth. And then it finally gets a DVD. There's this cartoon I love, Here Comes the Grump. And I forget the name. It's like Fritz Verlang or whoever I forget the name of the company that animated it. I thought it was the funniest thing on the planet as a child, and I only had a beta tape, that's right, not even VHS, beta, that I taped episodes off of television, and I would just watch them and laugh at them. I now have the complete DVD of every episode. It's fine, but it's not like the paragon of slapstick humor that I thought as a child, and I do think that's happening for a lot of people now, where there are certain runs that people loved that they're rereading now, and they're like, oh. And then there's certain runs that they didn't really get at the time and they're rereading now. Nocenti Daredevil, I think, is one of those where they're like, oh. So I think that's absolutely phenomenal. Quincognito is saying, I'm definitely the odd man out here as a 40-something who thinks some of the best comics and lesser degree music have still dropped in the last 10 years. Well, I think we do have a lot of old viewers, so don't mistake that. But yeah, I agree. I think, so, I mean, especially music. I just think, I think the democratization of production is a huge thing in both of those platforms. So as more and more people, different kinds of people from different walks in life and different places on the planet, as more and more people get to make comics and make music, then we get to hear their perspectives in a way we haven't before. So for that reason alone, I think we're always getting new things that are amazing. But that's just one aspect. Logan Wayne misses Thought Balloons Omnipods Cafe. What's a thought balloon? Don't mess with me, sir. I know you know what thought balloons are. Thought balloons didn't need to completely disappear. Yeah, I felt like that people were out with pitchforks for the thought balloons for a while, and then it was like, but it's a different moment of crisis. That's what's unique about comics, that we can see inside of their mind. Lance McNair is saying hello and registering as liking Thought Balloons Reaper. I will try to remember to write that down, but feel free to remind me that it should be a moment of crisis in the future. Okay, we're gonna zoom through some of this. Paul McGrew, just because I don't think I've said hi to Paul McGrew. I get it about getting older and not embracing new stuff, but guess what? No band is better than the Beatles or Zeppelin, and no one has drawn Spider-Man better than John Romita. I agree with one of those statements. I won't say what. We'll save that for later. Okay, and now, oh my, you just all keep talking, and I love you all so much, and you all say such interesting things. Yellow Epic's bottom row. Well, so this is Power Man and Iron Fist. Then next to that is New Mutants, and on the other side of that is Punisher. I know you can't see, is Punisher. I don't want to show you the gym shorts that I'm wearing. And then that's got to be it, right? Because there's no other this is all Iron Man. And then Luke Cage. And then after that is Marvel 2-in-1. I think we've... MP, hello to you. Javier Hernandez, I've read such limited manga, and I don't need to... Now we're over time for me to get started, so I can't go fully into it now. It's not the left to right. It's the style of the moments they choose to suspend in time is often feels like the wrong moment to me, which I know that's not real. That's just my perception, but it's really hard to unlearn what I think the moments that should be in the panels are. So I am always open to reading more manga, but just because my existing backlog is so long, it's like saying this, it's like me saying I would love to go to a hip hop dance class because I love hip hop dance. I love dancing. Am I going to make time to do that before I turn 50? Maybe one. So that's kind of where manga is for me. It exists. I know it's wonderful. It's part of this art form that I love. It is comics. It's a kind of comics. Am I going to make time to broaden my love of manga anytime soon beyond just like the obvious, like reading some of Akira? I don't know. Okay. I read, I think, the first issue of the Magic the Gathering comic. I will say my version of what Magic the Gathering fiction should be like, talking about fixing our immersion in time. And then we really have to get started. Super Chop, this is all your fault. You were the Moment of Krisis person too. There's the first ever Magic the Gathering novel, which I had 2 of because I wanted 2 of the card, the arena that was a land that you could tap to make 2 monsters fight each other, creatures I should say. So I bought 2 of the novel and cut the back pages out to send them away to get the card. So I had 2 copies. Did I bring them to New Zealand? No. But anyway, I liked it when you as the player were the planeswalker and that you were tapping things you had found through your adventures and pulling them in. Over time, it changed to the idea that we were seeing planeswalkers, which is no different, but there's this shift of like, now there's whole armies of planeswalkers, and planeswalkers are employing other planeswalkers, and I like got less interested. I liked it better when it was more of like a self-insert fantasy, I guess, but I know that's not sustainable from like a fictional world standpoint. So anyway, things that you did not ask me. Paul McGrew is here, is one of the people here exclusively for my fashions. Thank you very much. George Rosato, what is my favorite artist band? I can tell you this because I have a pyramid that I update once a year. Garbage is at the top. I'm not joking. It's not a Greg Land thing, although I love Greg Land. Garbage, ever since I heard their first album, they plug directly in my brain. Then my next tier is like people who have been with me my whole life. So David Bowie, Madonna, and the Beatles. Or no, it's only 2. So I think it's Madonna and David Bowie. And then the next row is like people who are my favorite songwriters, which is 3, which is the Beatles, Ani DeFranco, and Tori Amos. But that's very 90s me. Would I pick those same ones today? I don't know. And then it kind of expands down. And I have the pyramid all the way down to level 20, I think. So if each one has that number on it, that means I've got it down to like my almost 200 favorite artists, right? If they're more than 200. If there's 20 tiers, 1 + 2 + 3. Anyway, you get my point. Could be another stream, could be another show. I'm not a Magic the Gathering. We have to get started, Bunk. What are you doing? Crisis the Magic the Gathering. I played Magic the Gathering in the 90s, the old 90s. I've mentioned this a few times lately, and I stopped at not Fallen Empires. I have every card but 2 in Fallen Empires. No, that's not true. Anyway, I stopped around Ice Age and 4, and so when I look at the new cards that just say the thing like, this card has flash, reciprocity, careful, and stab you in the backness, I'm like, I don't know what that means, because I'm from when the cards explained the effect when they were on the card. So yeah, I would get murdered even if I played with modern cards. I'm from before the whole, like, flash things back to your hand from the graveyard, cards that could do one of two things. I'm from before all that. So I would get absolutely slaughtered. Okay. 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 We're just going to... The angriest that I got while reading a single issue could be this week. You never know, Adam. Okay. Now we're going to get started. As always, 10 minutes after when I said that I was going to get started. But we just got to, because actually today, because the secret problem with me doing this on a weekday is that I am up against school pickup on a weekday, and we saw how anxious it made all of you that one day that I was like, I gotta leave soon, I'm gonna leave soon, and then I like kept pushing it because I know, in my mind, I pad everything. I had to be at the school for a special event last night, and I had to be there at a certain time. Did I pad that time by 2 hours in order to make sure I would get there and get a parking spot? Yes. Did that mean I left my house 2 hours sooner than I needed to? Also, yes. But I am up against school pickup today, so I do have to get started. Okay. And your comments are wonderful. And you have to know that I always go back. It's not a put on. I read every single one that you make when I rewatch the stream to just make sure there's like no errors or things I have to slice out. If I do chapter marks, I truly, truly, truly read every one of your comments, including every comment, drinks. From One Wheelchair X. Oh my gosh, a surprise midweek stream. Hello everyone. So glad I can make this one after missing the last two. I'll be watching whilst editing a video, and more videos from One Wheelchair X. My primary motivation for catching up, it's not just to be caught up to the new comic book discourse. It's because I want to do a stream with One Wheelchair X, and I want to do it before August. And in order to do that, I need a midweek slot to be open. And for a midweek slot to be open, I can't be catching up anymore. All right, let's begin. So last week, you may remember that during the stream, I looked up this comic, The First Americans, and it was on Global Comics. So I was like, I'll read it. If it's on Global Comics, I'll read it. So I read it. So I read the first two issues, which are on Global Comics, which catches us up to the issue that released last week. So I guess I'm going to give myself like a minute for each one. So I wasn't sure what to expect here. I knew that it was about Americans migrating to America. This is written by Christopher Rita, illustrated by Tad Galusha, and lettered by Travis Lanham. So this is actually from issue 2, but it shows that we're talking about the human beings who migrated across the Bering Strait when it was exposed land from Asia into Alaska and then south across North America. So that's who this is following. And the first issue is so intriguing. I got totally lost inside of it. It's just this one tribe of people, and as we know from historical records and also like genealogy, I guess, it's not like millions of people walked across. These were small groups of people. And this is about one group of people where one of their hunters fails to kill a woolly mammoth, and he's really torn up about it. And so he strikes off on his own, and he's kind of ahead of the group, and the group keeps finding evidence of him being ahead, because this is actually based on a woolly mammoth fossil being found, I think, in Arizona, and it having an arrowhead found near it. And so this author kind of spun off of that idea and made this whole book. And so it's so interesting because we see this singular person who domesticates a wolf. So he's kind of, this comic is kind of the speed run of things that were happening in the historical record at this time. We see him domesticate a wolf. Now he's going into the grasslands. He's in the Americas. He's seeing bison. He's seeing, I guess that's an armadillo. I don't know what that thing in the middle is. He's seeing some kind of sloth, I suppose, by the tongue. And so he's making his way down. But now in issue 2, the rest of his tribe is making an effort to follow him. And there's this really interesting effect happening. By the way, there's almost no dialogue. There's like one word balloon per issue. And these are lengthy issues. The first one was 50 pages, and I think the second one was 60 pages. If you bought them physical, it would be totally worth it. There's this really interesting thing happening where the Ice Age is ending. And so that means on land, snow is melting and they're seeing evidence of greenery. But it also means as the waters start to rise from the Ice Age ending, their path home is being cut off. And they don't ever play that out in the comic book, but it's kind of like looming if you understand history here. And so here, now this guy is in America and he's seeing different kinds of flora and fauna he's never seen before. So he encounters this bear and he's like, maybe if I stay still, it will just go past. No. And then a lot of this issue is kind of about combat with the natural world. So on one side, we see the full tribe that's led by this woman who's on the cover, finding the leavings of one of the confrontations that the man has, but then also the man is learning to fight against all of this kinds of nature, including a lengthy battle with wolves that for somehow reminded me of Frank Miller. It's just like the kinetic quality of it. And so he's starting to leave basically cave drawings to say, like, hunt in certain times of day. The woolly mammoths are here in the hopes that his tribe, if they are following him, will find them. And here is the sequence against the wolves, which, I mean, it had to have been 15 pages. It was really like an amazing action sequence. This comic, fully endorsed, baby. It is on Global Comics. Check it out. It is so cool. I think it really, really, really is something interesting that I've never seen before. And it is from Critical Entertainment. It's called The First Americans. All right, now that was our catch-up read. Now let's get into the actual week. As we know, I don't read 2000 AD because it just stopped feeling like a reward. So that means our first comic book of the week is Absolute Flash number 3. This is by Jeff Lemire writing, Nick Robles on art, Adriano Lucas on colors, and Tom Napolitano on letters. Here's what I have come to realize about this book. It is an art book, and I'm coming to realize I would read a lot of crap to get art from Nick Robles. And this is not crap. It's fine. But in a world where all of the Absolute books are really crack-a-lackin', and where a lot of them are really packing a lot of dense story into each issue instead of super decompressing, except for Green Lantern, boo, this is pretty decompressed. This whole issue probably took 45 seconds to happen. And yes, there is something rhetorically interesting about that because it's Flash. And so he has time to linger on slow moments. But for me as a reader, pour moi, I just feel like nothing. I think I got one issue of story in this first 3 issues. However, turning Gorilla Grodd into this weird little lab monkey that becomes Flash's best friend and like psychically communicates him, very cool. And again, this art, Nick Robles. I love Nick Robles. And Adriano Lucas coloring him. I've liked when Nick Robles is colored by like a subtler colorist sometimes because I really think his art has really cool texture. But these pages, Adriano Lucas leaning into the red and the yellow of Flash. It's an art book, and that's fine. And Jeff Lemire is doing an okay job at writing it. I'm not trying to come for Jeff Lemire in this instance, but it's an art book. James Abel saying Absolute Flash number 3, 3 issues so far, and I still don't know what the main plot is about, but the artwork is great. Think that totally captures my opinion. All right, now we're talking about The Amazing Spider-Man, which I thought was going to be my Marvel pick of the week, and it was pretty damn good. Written by Joe Kelly, art by Pepe Larraz, colors by Marta Gracia, and letters by Joe Caramagna. To me, this is what I want in a Spider-Man comic. This was a whole issue fight. The fight was good. It was kinetic. He was funny in it. It just, the panels were just so kinetic and full of action as he's fighting both against Hobgoblin and Itsy Bitsy. But the thing that was really like I need to implore you not to miss this, is the scenes that are playing out with him and Aunt May in the past before he was Spider-Man. And I've been wondering for the first 3 issues, are these even canonical? Because we're seeing bad boy rebel Peter. He's walking on the train tracks. He's having a sip of beer. And here we see him at the toilet, as one does after having his first sip of beer. And he's been really quite cruel to Aunt May and Uncle Ben. And Aunt May is just sitting in the bathroom with him and just having a chat with him because he's immobile while he's glued to the toilet bowl. And she can. This is one of my favorite Aunt May scenes of all time. Pepe Larraz's art. I mean, yes, she has the same earrings as Maura McTaggart. Possible Easter egg? No, I think he just likes drawing those earrings. But Peter's like, go away. And she goes, I'm fine right here, thanks. Not sure I'll ever have your attention for this long ever again. So I'm going to talk and pray you remember it in the morning. This new you doesn't feel right. You're entitled to your youth, Peter. Experimenting with clothes, attitude, even this misadventure into the world of alcohol. Good. Yeah, maybe just don't mention that. Understood. But she kind of goes on to say that, like, she can't help that she's not his mom. She, that fate handed him that. And what she can help is how she treats him, and she hopes how he can treat her is something he can help, which it feels so foundational to Peter's morals of great responsibility, and it feels so specific to my parenting. Yeah, I just really blew me away. James Abel, Amazing Spider-Man 4, another good issue, but I'm getting a little tired of the flashback, James. That we're going to have to talk about that with the couples counselor this week, because this is exactly the kind of thing that landed us in counseling to begin with. Also, hello to Adrian Montanez. Now we move... So I mentioned this last time. First of all, Marta Gracia, I know I have a lot of negative things to say about your coloring, but the coloring on this panel at the bottom here of Itsy Bitsy, kind of with her crazy predator spider mouth, Perfect. No notes. Also, again, I love anytime people objectify Spider-Man. It's just a kink of mine, I guess. So anytime people are like weirdly flirting with him or talking about how his butt looks in the costume or like licking him, I'm there. It's not, I don't get excited by it. I just like when Spider-Man is meant to feel awkward. And here he's coming out of his flashback and he's saying all these nice things to Itsy Bitsy and she's like, really? Me? And then she realizes that he's just hallucinating and she gets very angry. Okay. I did not read Archie is Mr. Justice. I like horror Archie. I do not have any interest in superhero Archie. I did, however, read Astonishing Avengers Infinity Comic issue number 16. This is by Steve Orlando with art from Francesco Archidiacono, colors from Carlos Lopez, and letters by Travis Lanham. This kind of winds up our trip through Dreamland. Not too much happened. You know what's interesting is I keep saying that these books, every 4 to 6 issues add up to a whole issue. And so it's like, you would think that if this is the last issue of the arc, which it was, that it would have a lot more action, but it's kind of just Somnus walking around and being like, you're in webs, and you're in webs, and you're in webs, and everybody's in webs, everybody's in webs, and that, as I understand it, is one of the songs from Spider-Man, Turn Off the Dark. So that's all it really was. I think it's fine. It's fine. I've grown to like it because I like the cast that's in it, and I like Avengers team up. It seems like that's what it is. It's Avengers team up. It's the Avengers that are not in the main Avengers book with characters that are not Avengers that should have time to play with the Avengers. And if what it takes to make that exist is a digital comic, I am all about it. But this issue was pretty mild. I want to make sure to just say hi to D. Marcel. It's his 4th time watching my live stream. He's counting. How am I doing? I am doing particularly well on this day. I'm a little crazy. I didn't get to talk about this at the beginning. This is a crazy week for me. It's one of those weeks where I'm scheduled every minute. Like I finished one of the PDFs of this 5 minutes early and I just sat on my futon for 5 minutes like, okay, 5 minutes. That's just what this week is like. So, but you know what? Being busy means I'm alive. And it's not busy like, oh, I don't know what to do. It's like booked and blessed, as they say in the drag world. So I'm very happy to be here and I'm happy that you are here as well. I will take a lengthy break after the letter H. So that's when I'll get any of your comments that are a little more substantial. I can't talk about this book anymore. It's too bad. All I need to show you in it is look at them Peter Parker titties. What is that drawing? It's like his nipple. If his nipples were here, it would make sense. But I guess maybe they were told that because the online comics have like a lower age rating that they couldn't show male nipples. So he's laying on this table strapped down by Mr. I guess we're talking about it. Strapped down by Mr. Fantastic. So I guess his nipples are here, and that's just his chest. No. And also, this whole issue, see, now we're talking about it. This whole issue is he lost his power in this side series, which is unfortunately definitely in continuity. And Mr. Fantastic's like, I'm just going to give it back to you. And then Mr. Fantastic just makes an experiment and gives Peter Parker his powers back because apparently that's just a thing. We could just be, wait. The worst part is, by the way, product placement. Can you tell how ADHD I am because I'm so busy? This is, a lot of you have been commenting on my lovely glassware. This is by Pepper Raccoon. pepperraccoon.com. Who's a New Zealand artist. I love them. I've met them many times. They're so cool. So is my pin here in the background, which I'm not going to show you any closer. It's an Easter egg. So this is the Pepper here. I'll even take let's go back to normal screen so we can give them the full endorsement. Pepperraccoon.com. Okay. Back to Spider-Man. Yeah. So apparently Mr. Fantastic could be giving people spider powers any day of the week. Is what I took away from this terrible comic book. But he's like, it's not working yet, Peter. What was different about when you got bit by the spider? And Peter's like, I guess I was sad that day. And then Mr. Fantastic is like, well, you should cry. And then he gives him a titty twister. No, that's not real. I just made that up. Only part of it, though. Yeah, it was terrible. And then he smacks the thing. And I did want to highlight, since I'm always talking smack on this artist, Julian Shaw, that this was a good use of vertical scroll. Watching thing crash through all the walls. That was good. Good job. Okay. Superjob saying maybe he has the proportional nipples of a spider, which would be no nipples, which actually would explain that panel. Astonishing X-Men issue number 22. I don't know how much more loudly you need me to sing the praises of this digital book for you to go on Marvel.com and look it up when you with your Marvel Unlimited subscription. This is a Gen X comic book. It is being written better than everything else in the X line right now because why? Tim Seeley is writing. You don't get Tim Seeley on an X-Men comic book every day. We could have it every day, but Marvel's too stupid to do it. So yeah. That's my feelings on that. It was funny. And because he's adding one Generation X character back into the mix at a time, it's slowly building up. And there's time to like get used to each of their voices. So we started out with Banshee and Husk, then we added Skin, and that wasn't Tim Seeley's doing. That was written by Alex Packnadal, but now Tim Seeley's taken over. Now he's brought in Mondo, and it's funny. And Alex Packnadal did not get Skin's powers right. I back channel, I was sending screenshots to Curtis Findley of Epic Marvel Podcast. I'm like, Skin's power doesn't work like this, right? Because Curtis is like the foremost Generation X expert. And he's like, no, it definitely doesn't. Here in this issue, we get this awesome use of his power where he says the epidermis is real sensitive to movement, especially Merkel cells that sit around the base of hair follicles. So he basically turns himself into like a human seismic energy reading meter by spreading out his skin as thinly as he can across the ground. So cool! So cool! Love it. By the way, that art is by Eduardo Adino with colors from KJ Diaz and letters from Clayton Cowles. Great Gonzo is finally sold, convinced to start reading this comic, and Queen Candido says, oh yeah, hell yeah, creepy skin powers ignite. Okay, now we come to Avengers Academy. Marvel's Voices digital Infinity comic to the moon and back, whatever the name of it is, issue number 44, written by Anthony Oliveira, art by Carla Borelli, and colors by Ruth Redmond with letters by Ariana Meher. This, I can't tell you to jump in here, and I'm telling you to jump in all the time because I frigging love this comic book. But this was very much a resolution of plots that have been going on for like 20 weeks now of this weekly book. And again, I will say every week, oh look, I put the credits here just for good measure. I will say every week that this is like a full-length comic book. It's not one of the other digital comics like the ones we just looked at that is very short. So all of the Avengers together, and they're fighting Hydra on a train. And while some of them are fighting Hydra above the train, two of them in specific, Kid Juggernaut and Escapade, are fighting Hydra within and then above the train. I cannot tell you how much I hated this character, Escapade, in her run at the end of New Mutants in Krakoa. I just thought that the writing of her was tragically bad. But she has a power where she just switches places with another person. She just straight up switches, and she doesn't have to switch back. And so that can be really useful in a fight because she can let somebody else get the upper hand on her, and then when she's in a terrible position, just switch with the other person and put them into a terrible position. But what's really interesting about this is two of the kids make really brutal choices here, like really deadly choices you would not usually expect from an Avenger. And it's surprising if you've been reading this, and it's kind of like if you think back to that 2010 Avengers Academy run, which I love it so much, by Christos Gage. That was all about how like they were in the Avengers Academy because they were potential villains. Well, that's not why these Avengers are in Avengers Academy, but some of them are absolutely potentially villains. I mean, Kid Juggernaut, Red Goblin, who's like a kid version of Carnage. Like, yeah, there are potential villains in this mix, and so it's really easy for them to cross the line sometimes in their anger, and two of them do in this issue, and I thought it was really, really great. Yeah. I don't know how I put Janet Jackson. What did I say that was Janet Jackson? Did I just start doing the Rhythm Nation dance? I can't actually do it. But that's why I want to go to that hip-hop dance class. Okay, I don't read Barbarella by Blake Northcott. I did, however, read Batman and Robin, Year 1, issue number 7 by Mark Waid and Chris Samney, with colors from Mateus Lopez and letters from Clayton Cowles, and also Chris Samney. Oh, Escapade. Okay, it all makes sense in the end. The Janet Jackson song was Escapade. One of my favorite Janet Jackson songs. But we're talking about Batman right now. Here's the thing. There's two comics right now telling stories in this exact period. There's this one, Batman and Robin Year 1, which is telling like the first month of Robin living with Batman, because it's like Child Protective Services is still doing check-ins on him at this point. And then there's the other one, Batman, The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, which also is in this period. And if I'm being honest and truthful with you, I cannot tell the plot of the two books apart from each other. I do remember that this one has Clayface in it, and I do think this is really interesting because it hints at how rough around the edges early Batman is. Like, he he really convinces these mobsters in the scene that he's going to let a bomb go off, and then he just literally sticks a fork in it. Like, he knew how to defuse the bomb the whole time. I think there's a period of, especially if we treat Silver Age Batman as canonical, that this is not the Batman that we know as early Batman. But if you look at early Golden Age Batman, he was quite rough and violent in the beginning. And so I like when there's modern books that recontextualize that in a way that works with modern continuity, and Mark Waid is doing that here. And I also, I mean, it's Chris Samney. You know, Chris Samney, what are you going to do? But just love it. But then I also love this beat. I like spending time with Dick Grayson as a kid. It's just, I generally like comics with kids in them. I just think comics should have kids in them sometimes. But this in particular, something's so appealing. Like, he's trying to explain why he has a bruise from his adventuring with Batman, and he realizes that it could get Bruce in trouble. So he says he's being bullied at school, and the principal's like, no, you're not. There's no bullies here. And so he deliberately provokes this kid who is a bully, but not a violent bully, usually, to punch him, to sell it. And he's like, see, geez, what's a guy got to do to get believed around here with his black eye? I love that beat. I want to read a whole ongoing series of Dick Grayson just figuring out how to be like a kid in school and also Robin. So from that perspective, I am loving this book. Now, I'll skip the risk, Logan Wayne, of me singing all of Escapade right now and getting a copyright strike is high, because everything on Rhythm Nation, really, but Escapade in particular. Okay. Batman and Superman World's Finest, another Mark Waid book. Also obsessed with the past. So look, I'm willing to let go that I think that this We Are Yesterday crossover is the height of stupidity. I can release that thought out into the world and let it not exist in my head anymore. What I can't forgive in World's Finest issue number 39 is that, first of all, I love Clayton Henry's art so much. I think he should be mentioned in the same heartbeat as Dan Mora and Travis Moore. He's that good. That's why he's alternating with the two of them on this book. Colored by who? Tamara Bonvillain, because that's what makes this look like this look looks. It's Tamara Bonvillain's colors. Letters by Steve Wands. I'm not against playing this whole, like, a past Robin's in the present, and so then the present Nightwing is in the past, and then the Batman is here and there. But I think if you're going to do that, you need to make everybody as easy to look at and tell the difference between as Robin and Nightwing, who have very different costumes. So when we start playing with there being two Superman and two Batman, I think we should really be playing with them having different era costumes. And unless I was just criminally confused here, I don't think they played that beat hard enough. And so it's not that I was confused. It was just like, where's the fun of cutting back and forth between these, like, Silver Age Batman and Robin and Superman and today's Batman and Superman if we can't even visually, like, be in on the joke? That said, Clayton Henry's art is incredible. I love this motion blur on this page of Superman flying past this police car. So cool. And the action was fun. It was a perfectly fun issue. It's not giving me what I need for a comic that's doing this amount of flashbacks. James Abel says, Batman, Superman, World's Finest 39, how the old and the new Superman, Batman handle everything was fun to see and it felt unique. Well, you know it's going to be unique? Our therapy bill, James. Okay, so this is Blade Forger, which I dropped, which I just didn't really like the pace in the first issue, which brings us to Bug Wars. So what I loved about the first issue of Bug Wars, because I didn't come into this with a preconceived notion, but the first issue gave me a notion that, am I frozen? Hold on. My video looks frozen. That worries me, because if it's frozen, that's not a face we want the video to be frozen on. I might have to hit reload on the video stream. I will be back. Let's put up the banner. Back after these messages. All right, let me hit reload. Okay, that has to be one of the shortest interruptions in service in poll list history. So let's get back to it, shall we? Oh, now I've got to set up all the stuff again. Share screen, entire screen, Bug Wars, share, layout. Okay, here we go. So, as I was saying, I didn't come into the series with preconceived notions, but I came into the notions that I was given by the first issue from Jason Aaron, Mohamed Asrar, Matthew Wilson, and Becca Carey, which is that this was going to merge teenage drama with high adventure with this crazy mythology of these backyard bugs, which is like such a cool thing to play. And I was starting to lose that a little bit in the last couple of issues. This issue made it happen for me. They basically montage the kid and his spider mite friend moving through the yard to get back closer to his house so he can meet with the spiders about, like, why is he small? Why does he have an amulet stuck in his chest now? What was his dad other than a scientist? Clearly some magical bug person. And at first, as it started montaging their journey, I was like, oh, I don't want a montage. This is what I want to read. But as the whole issue kind of came together and I saw what they were trying to accomplish in the montage, and I won't entirely spoil that, but there's a reason that we needed to see a lot of clips of them adventuring. Then by the end of that, I was like, oh, actually, you know what? This really does work for me. And so this really took me all the way back to the heights of the first issue because I like this backyard mythology. You know that I love a shared universe. I love a mythological backstory. I like, you know, background text at the end of the issue, which the first issue had. And this really made me feel like I was in that world while also feeling it like all of those other things. It was the teenager story. It was the bug story. It was everything. Quincognito saying, I love Azrar and I often enjoy Aaron, but the name of this book is so bad I didn't even give it a look. This is one of the best Jason Aaron books I've ever read, honestly. But he's having quite a year with me. And just finally, the kid gets pushed to his limit. And he's not like a tough kid. He's just like this stringy kid with acne and like he's just like a skinny little thing. But he does have this amulet and he finally kind of gets pushed to his limit by this one bug who says, but you're just a grub. And it's really interesting to see what comes out from that. Next, we're up to Catwoman, number 76 in this lengthy arc by Turin Gunbeck with script by her, art from Patricio Del Pesce, letters from Steve Wands. This issue finally took us a little bit closer to Selena Kyle. We've been so caught in this flashback of her life as this girl, Elsie or Ellie or whoever she was pretending to be, that we finally have kind of reached a point where her modern day life reaches a point that the end of the flashback reaches the end of it too. And we kind of understand like why this is all important to her, except for it's just, I don't know. The thing about this was we finally got closer to hearing Selena's thoughts in the present, and I think that's the best part of how Turin Grombeck has been writing the series. I think she has a really, really good voice for Selena, and unfortunately, I think focusing so much on this past plot means that this is not going to be remembered super well. I do feel like it's trying to repeat being Catwoman when in Rome. Like, it really, really feels like it's trying to be Catwoman when in Rome, and maybe that's why it's so flashbacky. Maybe Turin Grunback or the editors really thought, ooh, if we do this nature of story, it's going to really play well. It's going to be something that we can make evergreen. It's going to sell forever. Maybe that explains the kind of like somewhat retro quality of the art here. But I just think it handed away the one true advantage that this run started with, which is that, Turin Grunback just writes a really, really good Selena Kyle, which I think is getting wasted at this point, unfortunately. The art was good, but it just feels like small ball. And it doesn't feel like we haven't seen Catwoman be Catwoman for like 8 months. So now we come to this Conan the Barbarian one-shot, Eastern Horizons. It was written by Walt Simonson with art from Jerry Ma. Y'all, I know I say this every month, and maybe you just don't think you like Conan, but Titan Comics is putting out some of the best Conan comics that have ever been made right now. They're so good, and mostly they're being written by what's that guy's name? Jim Zub, who's incredible, but maybe you don't like Jim Zub, or maybe you've already read some Jim Zub, or maybe that's not enough to get your ass in seats. Well, this should move your ass, because it's friggin' Walt Simonson, and this comic is impeccable. It is flawless. This other cover is by the interior artist, Jerry Ma. The interior art in this is breathtaking. It's like so finely lined, but then the colors, and he colors himself here, is almost like a watercolor approach to colors rather. It's a very typical Conan story. He thinks he's going to get some treasure in the kingdom. He doesn't, so he leaves the kingdom. He fights some bandits, and then there's a woman, so of course Conan wants to sleep with that woman. That's what Conan does, but she's more than what she seems. Conan does this every day. The amount of venereal diseases Conan has, infinite. But this particular one is really interesting because, as we know, I like when Conan has to face the supernatural, and Conan really does have to face the supernatural here. As you can see, it gets right in his face. I was holding my breath through this whole comic. It was put together in such a beautiful way. The art, the writing, everything about it was great. Paul Gudrun saying Conan, which is absolutely what I was thinking, but I couldn't say it because I was holding my breath. Oh, and then he gets to briefly interact with a dragon. Spoilers for a comic that's a month old. I mean, this art of this dragon. Come on now. Come on now. Okay. Next we come to The Curse of Sherlee Johnson. What is that even? Why is it named that? Well, it's a Spawn Universe book. But it doesn't have both banners, so you might have missed that. It just has a little dot. And it's written by Daniel Henriquez with art from Jonathan Glapion, color from FCO Plascencia, and letters from Andworld Design. So this takes a character who died more or less off panel in Spawn number 5 and assumes that she has been stuck between heaven and hell this entire time. It's a little girl. And so this is something Spawn is doing right now. And I think Spawn doing it very, very successfully, which is taking these moments of continuity from the past and saying there was a bigger story there. And so this one is about this girl. So she kind of has the Violator makeup a little bit. Is she in hell? Is there a reason a little girl who got killed should go to hell? What is the story there, right? So she's like reflecting on like, am I dead? Am I alive? Where am I? And now she's in this horrible place, but she also meets this other person in this horrible place with, I mean, Jonathan Glapion went off on the art on this issue. The colors are amazing. I really don't do a lot of splash pages usually for the show because it feels like it doesn't explain the narrative, but this was breathtaking. The colors, everything about it was breathtaking. And so now she teams up with this guy and they have to start fighting their way into hell, out of hell. They're really not sure like exactly what direction they're going in or why. I'm very engaged by this. I don't know that it has legs to go on forever and ever, but just in terms of a first issue, kind of keeping me off kilter, having amazing art, kind of like being like creepy cute. Like she is a cute little girl, but she's not like super violent, but there's something very creepy about her. It just was very, very effective. I was having a great time. This is some of the best art I've seen in a Spawn book in a while. And I like a lot of the art and a lot of the Spawn books. I just think this was an easy book to just pick up. And here's the thing about it that I can leave you with. It felt like what I, in my mind, think Spawn ought to feel like talking about comics that were better when we were younger. I still want Spawn to feel like it did in here. That's what I want from Spawn. And maybe this side, I always forget how this works. This is what I want from Spawn. And often Spawn now just feels so lugubrious. It just feels like it's like really dragging. And it doesn't have that like glint of mischievous evil humor in its eyes the way that it did back then in the 1990s. This issue did make me feel like that. I didn't read Cyberpunk 2077 Psycho Squad number 4 of 4 by Dan Waters. I can't read Daredevil Unleash Hell number 5 because it is physical only, although hopefully the paperback will be available digital and then I can read it. I did, although I think I said I was going to drop it. I forgot. And so I did read the last issue of Dark Empty Void, written by Zach Kaplan with art from Chris Sheehan, colors from Francesco Segala, and flats by Agnes Posa, and letters from Andworld's Justin Birch. This is really trying for a moment that's very similar to the movie Arrival, a movie that I revere. And the art is really good. I mean, the reason for me for reading this at this point is Chris Sheehan is great. This is exactly the kind of tone that I want from indie art. I love his paneling. I love the inset stuff. Really, really cool. It's about people who've made this artificial black hole. Something comes out of the black hole and they're trying to get that something, or is it someone, back into the black hole. But I just think that Zach Kaplan's script, it didn't feel developed enough. Like it just didn't really feel like there was enough script to the script. And so this whole issue is like, they're on the ledge, they're opening the door, they might want to get closer, maybe they don't want to get closer, and it kind of just like kept happening. And then we get to the end and they go to the black hole and the thing you thought was going to happen happens, and then it ends. And it just feels like, I don't know if we needed 5 issues for this. It really felt to me like a TV show or movie pitch that got turned into a comic pitch. And I say that because, not because like all sci-fi that gets turned to a comic was originally a pitch, but it just really felt to me like this was not scripted in a way that it should have been 5 issues of a comic book. Like it didn't, the individual issues didn't feel like they had rising and falling action in the way that I would expect a comic book to. It just issues didn't feel thrilling to me. I haven't read this. I just have to make a comment. So it says Dark Matter on the cover. It's from Advent Comics, which is one of these Kickstarter comic book brands. But I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the full title of this, and I'll have to look in my drive to see, I think it is Dark Matter. Yeah, here it is. Rise of the something. Rise of the Lexicons. I feel like we went through a period where it was cool to have like Rise of the Batman or Rise of the something in your title. And then after a while, it started being like, oh no, this is going to be terrible. And maybe it's not going to be terrible, but when I see, it's just one of those things. Like, just call your thing dark matter. Rise of the blah, you only need that if you're part of a bigger brand, and putting that brand and the title is going to help you sell the thing. So like Rise of the Legion of Superheroes. Yeah, okay, that's going to help Legion of Superheroes people find dark matter in the catalog. I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think there's a huge market for the Lexicons. Maybe there are. Maybe that was a really successful Kickstarter campaign. And so they have to let people know that it's Rise of the Lexicons. But in that case, why wouldn't you call it Lexicons : dark matter? I don't know. Okay. I don't read Darkwing Duck from Disney. I do, however, even though I don't give a single shit about the video games, read Sonic the Hedgehog X DC, or DC X Sonic the Hedgehog, which is written by Sonic's typical comic writer Ian Flynn, with art from Adam Bryce Thomas, colors from Matt Herms, and letters by my favorite letterer right now, Becca Carey. This was so good. I don't know how many more things I can say to get you to read this comic book. So at the end of last issue, I guess I'm going to spoil a little bit. So Darkseid, I say that right on the first try, Darkseid went over to the Sonic the Hedgehog world, and in ways that I won't spoil, now he's stuck there with the Justice League, and the Hedgehogs are on our DC world. And it's written such that it almost makes sense perfectly in current continuity. And so all of the various Hedgehogs kind of are like, well, while we're here, we've got to help and be the Justice League, right, Mr. Terrific? Like, and take care of things the Justice League would take care of until they get back. And so all of the Hedgehogs go on missions that their particular Justice League member would have went on, and it's the most adorable thing you've ever seen. This one of the mission with Hawkgirl and Supergirl, I could read a whole series of this, and it was like 2 pages. And that's the only complaint I have about this, is that it seems like this book is so dedicated to kind of giving equal play to each one of the 6 Sonic characters, which I get, because they're somebody's favorite, that it kind of feels like, once again, for the 3rd issue in a row, every one of them kind of got their own 2-page spread, which was delightful, and they were all great. But at that point, you're using 12 pages of the comic book issue. And so once you get the 2 pages of framing and the 2 pages at the end, it starts to feel like there's like we can't get anywhere, or but I guess it's not like these are like incredibly complex characters that we're trying to like learn new things about. I'm not saying that Sonic the Hedgehog characters aren't complex, but it's not the same as a Justice League book where we're like, oh, but we really wanted more meat to that scene with Star Sapphire. So I can understand that. It just felt like it went by a little bit fast for me, and even though it's wonderful. And James had the same feeling. Only complaint I had was this was over too fast. I wanted 20 more pages of Teen Sonic as the Justice League. Yeah, but you know, it's limited series. You gotta get it out. Actually, the other thing I didn't love, everything felt so in current continuity, but then the one of them that is being the Batman character fought a very cartoonish, not current version of Joker, and I get it. It's a toyetic crossover. Kids are just going to be buying it off the stands. You just want to use a very recognizable version of Joker. But it just felt like you should have used Scarecrow or Riddler or something with Harley Quinn or Poison Ivy to kind of like keep it in the believable world of recent DC, which is nobody but me would have this comment. But when I read this page, I was like, this goofy past Joker, really? This is not how the rest of this issue is written. So anyway, nitpicks. I really want to read Dead Samurai from Wake Entertainment. I looked on Global Comics. There is a comic called Dead Samurai, but that is not, I don't think, this Dead Samurai. I've yet to find it digitally online. So if you find it, let me know. I don't read Deadly Tales of Gunslinger. Spawn is the one Spawn book I don't read. I found it deeply unpleasant. However, now we come to my DC pick of the week. Batman in Detective Comics 1097. This is by Tom Taylor, of course, with a new artist, Lee Garbett, dreamy Lee Garbett. One of the people I would allow to draw my hair, with colors from Lee Luffridge, letters from Wes Abbott. So this, I was afraid we were going to like take a total left turn, but this is still very connected to that last arc of Tom Taylor's Detective Comics, which I loved. And what was that voice? Was I sure? I don't know. And what was interesting about this to me is it's a deep focus on Harvey Bullock, and it connects his backstory to the backstory of what's happening with these murderers that are in Gotham and that kind of connect to the character from the last arc. I don't enjoy when every arc needs to retcon a new past thing for somebody to go, oh, I remember now. I just hate that. As a trope, I hate it. However, this was paced so well. The art was so good. I, at a point, forgot that I was reading a single issue. I really was hypnotized into thinking I was reading Harvey Bullock trade paperback. Like, I really got that lost in what was happening with him. And because it took me so far afield from being like, oh, another flashback, like, I really thought I was reading a comic book fully about this character and his past. For that reason, it gets a pass for me for using that trope that I don't love. And the craft on this, the art, the storytelling was incredibly, incredibly high. Some people just don't vibe with Tom Taylor. I'm not an always vibe with Tom Taylor, but I'm an often vibe with Tom Taylor. And I really loved it. Also, I've read, I think, just about every comic that Lee Garbett has drawn. This is another level. I've never seen him do this level of rendering in a comic before. It feels different to me. Not that he was not capable of it, but he was like a little bit more like Olivier Coipel in a way, like where his characters sometimes felt a little bit small and had kind of small faces and small features, which is fine. I love Coipel, but this, he like really is pushing himself, and I really think it's really cool. So next is Doom Academy, a book which I am really loving. It is one of my favorite Marvel comic books because I'm sure I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but Mackenzie Cadenhead is this writer who I did some digging, and Mackenzie Cadenhead used to be an editor at Marvel, and then she went off and wrote novels, and now she's back as a writer. She gets it, man. She just gets it. So this issue gives us a little bit of a backstory of the student at Doom Academy that they're trying to save. And I'm sure she's going to join the cast. And so we get this beautiful fairy tale of her upbringing. And I forget if she's in Latveria or if she's in the neighboring country. But it's about how she's magical and her parents are like, no, hide the magic. We don't want that to be part of our heritage anymore. Which is like such an interesting message about passing, which doesn't like hit you over the head with it, but it's there to be read. And so then we realize that she's trapped in this book. And I don't always love Pasquale Ferry's artwork. Sometimes it can feel a little flat to me. I'm starting to realize that has to do with the colorist, because the way that Edgar Delgado is coloring in here, all of his characters feel so like round and dynamic. They just feel like they have shapes, that their bodies have roundness and planes and dimensions to them, and that I can almost like pluck them off the page. And I can understand how some colorists could take this same art and make it look too flat, but I never have that feeling here. And then there's also the storybook pages, which I think the action is a little bit hard to track, but they're drawn more like a storybook on purpose by Jal M. P. Lemos. And I really, really like seeing Sherlee and Doyle in the storybook world. I like how dorky and silly he draws Doyle, which there's only so dorky you can make Doyle in the real world, because he's like the flaming head of Dormammu, but he's still got like silly facial expressions. But in the storybook, they really, really pushed it to make him more look like a jack-o'-lantern. I love this book. If you like Strange Academy, you will love this Doom Academy. This, for me, pour moi, this is at a higher quality of storytelling than the actual original Strange Academy. I don't read Epitaphs from the Abyss, which is an anthology horror comic from the EC Comic imprint at Oni. However, I did read Exceptional X-Men. Exceptional X-Men, of course, written by Dr. Eve Ewing, with art from Carmen Carnero, colors from Nolan Woodard, and letters from Travis Lanham. Finally, here on the cover, it can be revealed. They have been dealing with Mr. Sinister this whole time, all 9 of these issues, and it's still happening. I like Claremontian comics, but Claremontian comics, things happen in every issue that feel distinct. That's the one where there was the bar fight with Juggernaut. That's the one where they fought Selene. That's the one where there were dire wraiths. We can all name what happened based on the covers. This is taking the casual approach to progressing through time that Chris Claremont would take with X-Men comic books, but not enough is happening in every issue. And that is really what's dragging an otherwise terrific comic book down for me. Carmen Carnero, I mean, I have a lot of favorite artists, and you hear me rave about many of them. I'm so obsessed with many. There's nobody doing it like this in comics right now. The facial features she draws, they're like out of like an indie comic book, like a Terry Moore comic book. But then the way she shades, accentuated here by Nolan Woodard's cover. But if you go colors, but if you go really in the shading, she shades like Gene Colan. I know I'm a broken record if you watch this show all the time, but there's nobody else drawing comics like this right now. Like, Jesus. Yeah. Now, the Mr. Sinister thing, it's fine. It's fine. I think Eve Ewing, I really like her comic writing. She had a great run of, was it Ironheart, which is on Disney Plus right now. I haven't watched it yet, no spoilers. But she seems to really be struggling with the action here, especially when they get into a fight with Sinister. It's not clear what Sinister can do, but it's never clear what Sinister can do. But like, she just has Emma Frost like using her powers again and again. And not that I need for them to announce like psychic attack, but it just felt like the fight, something was convenient happening in every panel with the fight with the older characters, and that Eve Ewing has a much tighter control over how she's trying to portray the powers of Bronze and Melee, who are her newer characters, and that bugs me. And because so little has happened to define every issue, it tends to be the mistakes that I remember as the definition of the issue. So even though this was a very cool issue with very cool art and a very fun confrontation with Mr. Sinister, I am going to now remember it as the issue where Eve Ewing didn't seem to have a great grasp on how to use Emma in a fight. And I don't like that for me. But that's what happens when you don't put anything recognizable as a plot beat into every issue, and it just feels like we've been lingering on the same plot for 9 issues. So this is a very high quality comic book. It's going to be great in collected edition. As single issues, it is kind of pissing me off a little bit. Logan Wade saying my "for moi" catchphrase. You know that that's me badly doing Frank Oz doing Miss Piggy, right? For moi, Kirby, you shouldn't have, right? It's bad. It's bad. We all know that it's bad. That's the joke. But yeah, it is kind of becoming my catchphrase. Okay, this Fantastic Four issue, this was a little bit of a redemptive moment for Ryan North for me, because if you remember, I have been down on this book. I do not think he has been writing them well for this, just this arc. Everything before this arc, everything up to like issue 28 or 29, perfection. This issue, this arc, I just feel like he's writing them all as dumb and mean-spirited just to like get the plot to happen that he wants to happen. But it's fine, because this issue, they're not in it. This issue is an all Valeria issue. I love Valeria. She's my favorite character in Fantastic Four. And this, I mean, this is a real heartbreaker. This gets back to Ryan, and then apparently I had another exceptional X-Men picture. This is a stab in the heart. This really got me. It's Valeria gets separated from the Fantastic Four. She's on a different Earth, and she has to figure out how to work with the Fantastic Four on this Earth to get her back to her Earth and maybe reunited with her parents. Except for on this Earth, things with Galactus and things with Franklin Richard go in a very different direction. I don't want to spoil it for you. This is a really good issue. Does it make up for all the weird character work the past couple issues? Not quite. But it does actually kind of reverse course to a point that maybe some of those choices they made that didn't make sense to me won't matter anymore. Plus, it's a whole issue with Valeria, which I always love. James Abel saying this issue showcases how smart Valeria is and how she's key to making Franklin have humanity and know right and wrong. And also, this is art by Corey Smith with inks from Wayne Faucher and Oren Jr. and colors from Jesus Abertov, letters from Joe Caramagna, and it hints, it tickles a little coochie coo that maybe a particular Franklin Richards plot development from the Dan Slott run that none of us liked might be reversed, or at least not all that it was cracked up to be. Although we have had a hint of that already in the Ryan North run, to be fair. Also, Jean Grey. Love it. And just Corey Smith drew it fantastic. Fantastic. Galactus. I don't know how to feel about this. Welcome to the Twilight Minor Threats. I still haven't read the original Minor Threats miniseries. I actually had it on my list to try to catch up for the stream, but as I mentioned, I only had 5 free minutes in the last 48 hours, so that didn't happen. But this is a anthology series, which is a different high-quality creative team tackling every issue. This one is written by Gail Simone with art from Gene Ha, which is one of the artists who drew Wonder Woman Historia with Kelly Sue DeConnick. And so Gail Simone, she's like a weird, messed up little goblin. And I say that lovingly here because she envisions this guy, this lobster guy, because this is a world of minor threats. They're like minor league heroes that don't really do so much. So she imagines Lobster Guy, and she imagines all of these other kind of heroes that are useless. The one woman is, I can't even say what her power does because I would get demonetized, but that's Gail Simone for you. Always got to go for the joke about the sex. Funny sex jokes from Gail Simone. But anyway, this Lobster Guy is like, he has no way to make money. He's not a real hero. He's on the convention circuit making less than $100 a day, which ain't nothing, but it's not enough to like fuel his family's life. And there are these extreme eating reality shows like, just sell us one arm. We just want to, we'll make a spectacle of it. We'll make you look good. We'll have drawn butter. We'll marinate it, and then live on the show, we'll tell you what your arm tastes like. That's messed up, Gail Simone. But here's the thing I take away from this. Gail Simone, you know, she got her start writing a column online, originating the term women in refrigerators. I think Gail Simone is at her best when she can kind of like wink at something. Wink at a trope, wink at a set of characters, wink at something that's going on. This is very winking at so many different things. She winks at Alan Moore. She winks at Rorschach. She winks a little bit at, like, you know, online manosphere comic book fans, and it's genuinely funny. I don't think that approach to humor plays well for me on a book like Uncanny X-Men. It just doesn't, and I don't like it. But this reminds me of why I did grow to like Gail Simone. I like her on indie stuff. I think she's good when she can just play in her own sandbox and be really, really weird and transgressive in her own sandbox. And Gene Ha, I think he is an underrated classic. He is a gem. He's a veteran. I've never seen a Gene Ha comic not look cool. And I know that people like know who he is and appreciate him. Did he do top 10 with Alan Moore, I want to say? But I only know him because I've read his indie stuff, and then I read him in Historia. Like, I don't know him from whatever he got famous on originally. He might have been a Wildstorm person, actually. But his art is just so cool to me. So cool. So yeah, this was a cool issue, and you can drop in on any issue. So if you like Gail Simone, if you like Gene Ha, colored here by Wesley Wong, you could just pick up this issue. You don't have to read a dang other thing from Minor Threats. It doesn't matter at all. Always an Instigator just read Gail Simone's Clean Room and really enjoyed it. I love Clean Room. This is not as scary as Clean Room, but it's got that same, it has that same Gale thumbprint on it that Clean Room does. Okay, I didn't read G-Ville, a comic by Jimmy Gownley, issue number 11. I did not read Ghostbusters Dead Man's Chest, number 1 by David M. Bohr. And I did read this cover. This is a problematic clashing pattern cover, and I do enjoy it. It's the Great British Bump Off, Kill or Be Quilt, issue number 2 from John Allison. If you've never read John Allison before, he has a long-running webcomic that was called Bobbins, and then also I think one called Scary Go Round. He's the creator of Giant Days. I've been reading him longer than some of you, especially one of you who is in the comics, comment strength, has been alive. This is the story of a girl who's on a summer vacation on her borrowed dad or uncle's barge boat in the canals and streams of England, and she scrapes it up, and so she has to park it and take a job at a knitting shop, but then she gets into a what is the word I'm looking for? Not corporate, a commercial, what's the word for a store that sells things? I don't know, but it's a war between stores, a store war, and so she keeps going back and forth and trying to investigate because she fancies herself somebody who can solve a mystery, or at least solve a mystery if it means she can make the money to repair her boat. The joke density from John Allison, it's like sometimes you realize that you thought it was a joke per panel, and then actually the panel had 3 jokes in it, and you didn't even get them all on the first pass. Part of that is because he's working with Max Sarin here, because he we worked with on Giant Days, and really knows how to deliver the density of jokes that John Allison would script for himself, because he's also a great illustrator. Lettered here by Jim Campbell, colored by Sammy Boras. I just love this one. These 2 people are setting out a sign outside of their shop, and the one woman's like, come in and have a weak cup of tea, please. But then, so you're like, okay, weak cup of tea, that's the joke. But then she's so angry that she's fuming that she's putting out this sign because they got sabotaged. And then you read the lettering on the sign, and it says man creche. And a creche is like a kindergartner, like a looking after, 50 meters up. Leave him there with spends. And then the next page completes the joke because it's actually a beer garden. It's all these men that are like, my wife is shopping for yarn. Which, yes, is a very gender essentialist joke. But just like the sign and not really fully getting the joke of the sign, and then doing the page turn and realizing that it means bar up the street if you don't like want to come in here for yarn shopping. It's just so funny. It's just the jokes. It's just the joke density, the charming joke density. I love it so much. Chris Brogan, hello. Killer Bee Quilt is so much fun. Grimm Fairy Tales, my fave. This cover, I wish just one time, I hope maybe for issue 100, that they hire their cover artist to do interiors, because their covers are always so amazing. I can't even do a credit for it because I didn't save the covers credits page because they have a whole separate page. But anyway, so this is grinding towards some kind of Hickman-esque incursion. And so as a result, in Bryn Athyn, Pennsylvania, where all of the Grimm fairy tale characters live, there's this horde of skeletons and undead that are fighting them, but this Father Time guy who's causing the incursions is like, wait a second, I didn't want them to die to skeletons. They've got to die the way I want them to die. This is actually a really good individual Grimm Fairy Tales issue because it uses heavy caption boxes, which they don't all do. And the caption boxes really explain who the characters are, which is one of the big problems the series has. It has such a cool cast, but it assumes you have been reading Grimm Fairy Tales universe for at least a decade and that you have perfect recollection of every character. And it brings back one of my favorite all-time Grimm Fairy Tales characters, not only Van Helsing, who is probably my top 3, but also Mystere, who I was just talking about when somebody asked what my top 5 Zenescope characters were on the stream earlier this week. This is just really, really cool. I do think that, again, this artist, Babish Cortez, who's been drawing this title for a long time, sometimes when the characters are smaller, he just puts so much ink on their face, and then the colorist, George Cortez, who's also the colorist for a long time, he just goes too gray on the faces, and it just makes the faces look kind of smudged. But because the skeletons are so glowy, because there's this huge skeleton creature and all this magic, the art ultimately did work for me. I just wish they would just brighten up the faces a little bit. They just always look so gray to me, which is no fun. But I love Grimm Fairy Tales. This is not one of their best issues, but it got the job done, and I did enjoy it. This was an indie comic, which I very quickly looked up, because if there's a guitar on the cover covered in blood, I am here. And so I checked this out, and it is on Global Comics. It is called The Guns of Brixton. It is written by Sean Golding, art by Renzo Podesta, and letters by Josh. This is cool. It's a little messy. So, I just had to show you the credits page. How fucking cool is that? Come on. That is awesome. Okay, great graphic design. So I just need you to understand what the art looks like. It's like a little bit rough. I don't know. Rough and not like it's hard to look at, just that it's like rough edged. I mean, the figures are figures, that they're clearly a band. It's hard to draw music. I think it draws music very well, but these are characters with jagged edges, and I just need you to understand that going into the comic book if you're going to go read it. That said, I really liked it because they're a punk band, and they are very punk. I mean, they're drinking, they're doing drugs, they're anarchists. They come on stage dressed as all these politicians, and then they whip off the masks and they said, "Yeah, you're on the patriarchy. Are you even from this century? And if that's how it's gotta be, well, I'd rather anarchy." Yes! But then there's zombies. So it's fun because it's like a punk band that feels very authentically punk to me. And they all do a bunch of drugs. And then they're like, are there really zombies or are we just on drugs? And I love that their whole perspective on the zombies is like, our mosh pits are worse than this. Like, with zombies is no big deal. Really, really fun. Please go give this a read and go give it a view on Global Comics. If you love bands and comics, if you like punk music, real DIY punk, if you like zombie stories, and if you love this kind of like really like, gritty, fun art and really, really good lettering, it must be said, go and check this out. It is, I believe, set in Brixton, because I don't think that's the band's name. I think the band is called something about Rachel and the Heads of State is the band, which is why they're all dressed as politicians. So and it's just called The Guns of Brixton. I can't put my finger on the artist that it reminds me of, which is why I'm kind of hemming and hawing. But the action, I did find it to be trackable. It wasn't like so messy. And I love this playing with the 9-panel grid to like squeeze it and make it kind of slanted. I wish more people would do that. It doesn't work in every single instance, but it just made it easier for me to appreciate. I don't read Hell's Half Acre. I read the first issue. It just felt very crowded conceptually. I couldn't really get into it. This is my last one before the break. And this actually, when Superjop brought up the Moment of Krisis topic, it made me think of this issue. And it made me kind of smile because the level of hatred I had for this issue, but here's the thing. It was incredibly well made. It's written by J. Michael Straczynski. The art by German Peralta is incredible. The colors from Guoooooo EFX are incredible. This is some of the best you've ever seen Doctor Strange look ever. This is some of the best you've ever seen the Hulk characters look ever. So why did I hate this issue so much? Because J. Michael Straczynski just wants to write whatever the fuck he wants to write, and he doesn't care, like, where is it in continuity? Doesn't matter. Is this how Bruce Banner talks? Absolutely not. Did we need a Bruce Banner re-examining his origin in the atom bomb test issue that references Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk only 2 years or 3 years after the end of Immortal Hulk? No, you're not going to dig any deeper into that hole. Al Ewing got it all dug all the way through the earth to the other side. We're in China. We made it. So, like, I don't understand why this exists. What is he trying to do with it? And it barely uses Doctor Strange. It's just Bruce Banner's like, I really need to go back in time because I really am sad about being the Hulk and I want to go experience the atom bomb again. Also, I really have to go to the bathroom. Can I pee? Like, that's not what Bruce Banner sounds like. So it really just bugged me because I have this preconceived notion of like what a Bruce Banner comic should be and like what it sounds like when Bruce Banner is introspective. And it just made me so angry because this like, and the thing that really got me, and that's the reason I took out this page. By the way, every page of art is beautiful. If you care less about this character voice stuff and you're just in it for like a story that's interesting and makes you think something for a minute and you like the art, you'll like this. But on this page that has him talking about all the other gamma-powered characters, including She-Hulk and including Amadeus Cho, it really struck me that this exact script with all of the same dialogue from Bruce Banner would have made so much more sense with She-Hulk or Amadeus Cho. Of course, the inciting event of them becoming Hulk is different, but they could have also gone back to the point that Bruce Banner became Hulk. Actually, that would have been really interesting because they weren't there. Or they could have gone back to their own inciting events. But if in your mind, you just pretend instead of Bruce Banner here that it's Jennifer Walters or Amadeus Cho talking the entire time, it makes so much more sense. And it's so much more interesting to have one of them go to Doctor Strange, having not been the main characters of Immortal Hulk, and say, Doctor Strange, I want to understand more about what makes the Hulk Hulk. Now, I get we can't have the comics that we imagine in our head. If we want to, we should write comic books. So it's never fair to take a comic book and saying this comic book sucks because it's not the comic book that I wanted this comic book to be, which goes back to the Moment of Krisis. I think that's why people say comics aren't good anymore. The thing they're really confessing there, and this is what I meant to say succinctly in that Moment of Krisis, is they're saying this comic is not the comic I expected it to be based on the last time I liked a comic of this kind. And that's not fair, and you can't do that. But for somebody like moi, who reads every single Marvel comic book and has now for well over 15 years, and who also knows these characters really well, I just think sometimes you have to be mindful of the fact that you're either doing something that feels really off voice for a particular character or something that's just been done. And if anybody should know that, it's JMS, who has been writing for Marvel just longer than I've been reading Marvel, and in this go-round anyway, and I just feel like I don't understand what he was trying to accomplish in this issue. So that's a lot of words to say this issue is beautiful, and probably everybody else is going to like it, but for me, pour moi, it was like a -5 out of 5. I hated it. And that brings us to the break. I haven't seen a whole ton of comics. I didn't quite say comics that time. Commons from you. Reckons, as we would say in New Zealand. So I'm just going to start high and scroll down. Maybe we'll pick up a couple more that I missed earlier when I had to race through. Of course, those people are not even on the stream anymore, so who knows? Okay. Apparently, people were in a whole conversation. Logan Wayne, AMA, if it's not too personal, what made me choose New Zealand to move to, and were there any other countries for consideration? I really was going to move to Canada. It was almost a done deal. We were like looking at houses. And it just didn't work out. I could have been in Canada speaking French all the time. My French would have gotten better after a decade, possibly. But no, New Zealand, it was just, we wanted to move to a country that was primarily English speaking because we don't really speak any other languages fluently. And so that limits your choices. And the UK was having its own political tumult at the time that we moved here. So the UK wasn't really a good option. And so it kind of just like wasn't a ton of options, and there was an opportunity to move to New Zealand. Visas are complicated things, man. You think you could just move to another country whenever you want to? That is a very American opinion. Let me tell you. I'm not talking to you, Logan Wayne, but people don't know. People don't realize, like, the difference between getting a visa to just go and visit a country on vacation and the difference of getting a visa that's going to let you stay there and maybe have the ability to be employed there, and then whether or not employers will even talk to you based on the kind of visa you have, that is a whole other story, and that is, that is really, really hard to navigate. And so New Zealand is what worked out. Mall 360 has been listening to a lot of Mazzy Star. My best friend Gina, who's in a new band, so once there's more music of hers to share, I will share it with you, because she's my best friend and my favorite musician. That's why I was in a band with her. The first time I saw her perform on guitar on stage was playing Fade Into You by Mazzy Star. Fade into you. And I was like, I want to do that. And so then I learned guitar, and she was very skeptical. She was like, everybody says they're going to learn how to play guitar. And I'm like, you are not familiar with my stubbornness game. And so I taught myself guitar because I'm like, I want to play guitar with you. And we were already really good friends, but then we became best friends. So yes, big Mazzy Star fan of Omnibuds Cafe, mention of Weezer. Oh, so this was way back at the beginning. Dean Costarellis has an odd question. When reading a comic, do I read the dialogue first and then look at the surroundings of a panel, or vice versa? I would say because I was such a prose reader for so many years, I tend to hyper focus on the script to the point that if I'm really rushing, I'll almost like forget to look at the image, or I'll only look at the image ever so briefly to confirm that the thing that is happening in the image that I think is happening. Part of why I've really tried to slow down, and part of the reason I always do say the names of the colorists and the letterers and the artists, is because comics are not just a script medium. They're an image medium. And so I try to take that into. Now, I think because I read digital, I still always orient to script first because it's just easy and I'm not like turning a page and kind of like taking in the page. So I read very much panel to panel, and that affects how I digest layouts, and it affects a lot of things. A lot of the times when I'm saying something didn't make sense, you have to think that's because I'm a very panel reader, and I'm not reading in guided panel. I'm a very wait for them to tell my eye where to go on the page. I think if I were to be reading a lot of these comics physically, I would probably have a different opinion of some of them. But yeah, I would say I start with the text still, and then kind of zoom out to appreciate more of the image. I do, in fact, know that Here Comes the Grump had an animated movie based on it called A Wizard's Tale. It was branded and named different things in different countries, but you have to see the original to fully appreciate it because the original is deeply stupid and very, very 60s. Love it. Yeah, so everybody knows about the movie. I have not seen the movies. I have not seen the movie. Was the New Mutants movie that bad? I don't know. I didn't see it. As we know, I'm not a movie person. That's why I've never seen the Here Comes the Grump movie. All I know was that lady, Anna Joy Taylor, is the perfect Magic. And I hope that we get her as Magic at some point in the Marvel universe, although now she's getting kind of old for the Magic. One title that never changes no matter how old it is Carl Barks' Uncle Scrooge. Still great. Decades later. There's a non-epic there. Okay, no. I know what you're talking about now. It is Iron Fist, Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, because it's all of the black and white Iron Fist stories from Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, which for whatever, maybe because they're rated mature, I don't know, but they didn't put them in his epic collection. His epic collection is very much just his Chris Claremont, John Byrne material with only a little bit of his first appearance. And so every so often when there's a book that collects something that like absolutely goes with an epic, but it's not going to be in the epic collection, I will put it on the epic shelf. There's a Black Widow book like that has some of her team ups that the epics omitted, and I do have it on that shelf. I like the shelf uniformity, but I also like to just pull things off for reference. So if it's something that goes beside that run, I will put it there for reference. AS has been here, and I never even got to say hi to AS because I was launching into the show at that point. Jake 13, what is my favorite David Bowie album? Well, Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders of Mars is my number 2 album of all time. Joni Mitchell Blue and Ziggy Stardust are kind of like, they occupy the same space in terms of my favorite album. But I like a lot of David Bowie albums. I'm a big glam rock David Bowie fan. I don't really get the Eno era. I mean, I've listened to it, but because I'm so into David Bowie as a catchy songwriter, the Eno era kind of floats by me a little bit. I do like some of his 80s stuff. I liked Let's Dance and Tonight. I think there's good songs there. But then I really like 90s Bowie because that was my Bowie at the time that I was like, I mean, that's where I saw him on tour. I don't really like Reality. I like Earthling, but I can acknowledge Earthling's not a great album. I love Heathen. I think Heathen's one of his great albums. I think Black Star is a instant timeless masterpiece. It would be fun to rank the Bowie albums. I don't know if I've ranked them all because I just don't feel like I know I don't know the Eno albums well enough, and I don't know Scary Monsters well enough. I have Scary Monsters. I've listened to it many times, but I just don't like know it well enough that I really feel like I could rank them all fairly. And I don't know Tin Machines albums that well, and I have them all. When Bowie passed away, there's this great book. I don't know the name of it, but you can find it on Amazon. But it's like one of those, it's like every time Bowie had ever been in the studio, who he was in the studio with, what demos came out of it. So I got that book, and I was just reading it to comfort myself. I was distraught when David Bowie died. He's a huge influence on my life. And I was like, ooh, I'm going to put together a playlist of every song David Bowie has ever been in the studio for. So that was the beginning of my chronological artist lists and listens, and that was, when did he pass away? In 2016. So that's been going on now for going on 10 years. And have I made it to the bottom of the Bowie listen officially every single song? Because I truly have everything. You trust and believe. I have stuff that he sang like one time on the BBC that never had a record. I have it. No, I haven't made it to the bottom yet. Okay. I am no Jedi saying hello to everybody. I hope you guys stick around or that you rewatch this later and know that I do say hi to everybody, at least when I can remember. Oh, Quinkanigo is already prepared to brutally judge my Bowie album rankings. Lance McNair, Michael McDonald is in the running for favorite vocalist. Wow, you contain multitudes. He's one of those things. My parents were not into like softer rock and pop of the 70s. So my knowledge of music jumps very much from like glam rock to disco to like 80s R&B like Michael Jackson, and I'm missing a lot of rock and soft rock artists from the late 70s because my parents, this deep crisis lore which we're not going to get into, but both of my parents were bartenders, so they liked club music. So they had come from, I guess, like going to rock clubs to like being in disco clubs. So if Michael McDonald wasn't going to be pumping in the club, so I don't know the Eagles, right? And like they were clearly aware of the Eagles, but they were too far from the glam rock oeuvre and not close enough to the disco oeuvre that like that was like a blind spot. So a lot of my going back and learning about the 1970s is being like, whoa, there was music other than glam rock and disco in the 70s? Are you sure? That's the journey that I'm on. 90s is hitting over 30 years, so now it is ye old 90s now. I do not like that idea. George Rosado, great choices in music. Wow, thank you very much. I was jamming on some Tori Amos in the car last night because I have this giant playlist of all of my favorites, but it's in order of like how recently it was listened to and how many times it's been listened, and then artist name. And so I just got in a deep sinkhole of Tori Amos B-sides, and it was raining, so I was just raining and singing my Tori Amos. It was amazing, wonderful. Kid Crisis is number one. Kid Crisis, endless entertainment in my life with Kid Crisis. Bunkmaster taking me to task on this is the comics were better in my day take on Magic. The keywords all have reminder text on them. No, they don't. That's a lie. Because I have a friend, Felix, in Australia, who shows me new Magic cards, and I always have to ask him what the card does. They do not always have reminder text that explains. Also, I'm not saying that Magic was better when I played it. Magic was slow and boring when I played it. They have adjudicated so many of the rules and made it so much more interesting. I'm just saying I would lose, and I was good at Magic at that time, but the way that I know Magic to be played in my mind doesn't exist in the world that has all these things. I had a creature deck that was all green, all creatures, and they're all creatures that made other token creatures, and the only enchantments in the deck were like lures and poisons. So I could turn and regens. So I can make any creature regenerating, any creature instant kill, and I would just have a million creatures. So like even if you would do like a hurricane or like a spell that like did 1 damage to everything, or pestilence or something, I would just have them all back the next turn because they were all so cheap. As soon as I drew up a new hand, I would have more creatures. And it was like unstoppable. There were not a lot of ways to deal with somebody who had 35 creatures in play, unless you had a deck that was really specific to punishing them for having creatures in play. So everything I know about how to play Magic, it's like saying that somebody who was like used to the rules of baseball or basketball or something in the 90s, would they be as good now? Well no, because the play has changed. So yeah, I'm not trying to give it Magic was better in my day. I'm just saying my play style would not work now, and the cards do not explain what all those things mean. That is a lie. Gremlins 2 is 35. That's crazy. Gremlins 2 is the one that's in the mall. Love that. Okay. Oh, now we're into talking about the comics. So I think most of these are things that I caught already, but I'm just going to give a quick scroll. That's where my video is frozen. Rise of the Planets of the Apes is one of my favorite movies. But see, that's the thing. A, I think that's from that period where Rise of was like a thing. And B, that tells you what it is, right? We all know what the Planet of the Apes is. Rise of the Planets of the Apes is like, oh, this is how they turned into the Planet of the Apes. Like, that's educational. It's directional. It's good marketing. I think what happens, and this is a marketing thing, it's just a thing, is that whatever the marketing phrase is that makes something sounds cool, having an adjective on a comic book, saying Rise of in the title, whatever the thing is, just kind of sweeps across the land and becomes the thing that everybody wants to do. But then when everybody does the marketing thing, whatever that thing is, changing your logo, right? Sometimes that's the hipness. And then a bunch of brands with iconic logos change their logos, the logos that don't look like logos anymore. So I just think that Rise of became one of those things that I'm like, is it the Rise of? Is it? What's rising? Tell me what's rising. So, didn't realize that some book looked like something. I remember that's what was, Detective Comics maybe? I don't know. Okay. One Wheelchair X says, Exceptional X-Men, still my favorite book of the line. I agree you can slow, but the character work is incredible. Gail Simone, take notes, yeah. Carmen Canero's killing it. 9 issues with no break is insane. Yeah, it's going to read really well in collected edition, and for that reason, we are going to be recommending it for a very, very long time. I don't think it's as good as single issues. Lance McNair says, my goal is to read all of Hickman's F4 before the film comes out. Not sure if it'll happen. I will still read in the next few months. You could binge it. I mean, it's very bingeable. It's Hickman and it's big idea Hickman, but it's also like easier reading Hickman than a lot of other Hickman, than like his Avengers or his X-Men. I believe in you. You could binge it in a week. I mean, who knows how busy you are. I couldn't binge it in a week, but it could be done. Could be done. Top 10 was Superjob's favorite ABC comic book. Chris Brogan, we got that. The Tell Me Everything Shauna panel is my favorite of the series. Yeah, I just love John Allison. I mean, certain writers, certain cartoonists just like hit that button in your brain every time. And for me, John Allison is that. Always an instigator, like the first Great British Bump Off series too. I think I can never remember if I read it. I have to like look back in my database to see that. I saw today is Mazzy Star singer Hope Sandoval's birthday. Look at that little bit of synchronicity from us talking about and singing Mazzy Star. Planet 618, I'm enjoying Batman and Robin Year 1, but not feeling the mob story for Robin-centric book. Yeah, it feels like the first few issues were so perfectly joyous, and now that we're like really leaning into the mob story, it's feeling like that half of the story is getting like farther and farther apart from the fun, cool Robin stuff. I want to complain. Why do variants make me buy books I don't want to read? I didn't need X-Men 17, but Melanie just had to show me a P&F Candace and Ducky Momo variant. I don't know what any of those words mean. And now I own all of the P and F variants. Well, I don't... Here's my secret. Not only am I always angry, not only is this hair today spectacular, but my secret is that variant covers for me, they're all on the internet. Spoilers, they're all on the internet. So I would buy it as a poster. I would buy it as an art print. Am I going to pay $25? I've done that one time, once. And it was for a Kevin Wada variant of X-Men 2013 that had him drawing all of the 6 X-Women in like flapper era costumes. And that was because I like Kevin Wada, I like flapper era dress, I love X-Men, I like the women in X-Men, and I wanted that one specifically. And even then, I think I only spent like $8. They're all on the internet, but that's for me who doesn't like put things on display. I think if I had a huge wall of single issues behind me, maybe I would be more interested in variants, but I just... You know, sometimes I'm not wired. It's my particular neurodivergence. Like, I can't understand why certain things would be collectible, then other things to me are hyper collectible. I just don't understand variant covers. I don't. They're just pictures. Pictures we can see for free on the internet. Quincanito is saying, damn, my Bowie opinions are too reasonable to fight with. I'm a Berlin booster, but I can't go wrong with Ziggy number 1. James Abel, I've got my Bowie, Stardust, Ray Guns, and Moon Age Daydreams signed at Heroes Con by Michael Alred, Laura Alred, and Steve Horton. Usually that's right here, but oh, here it is. I still have to read the second half of it. Omnidog and Freddy peer pressured me into reading it, but I read all of Wonder Woman Historia that weekend. I only got halfway into that, and I haven't read the rest. Logan Wayne, we're almost done this. We have to go back to the comics. We got to do it. We got to read them. When reading collected editions, especially, do I read one book after the other? Oh yeah, I used to be the kind of person who could have ongoing reads at all times. Now I mostly need to sit down and read. But then you have to think, I also read 60 different issues of a pull list in a week. So that's like opening 60 collected editions and putting a bookmark in them to next month. So what I'm saying is my brain is completely scrambled like eggs. Andrew saying, serendipity, I'm currently reading Iron Fist and the Sons of Tiger, White Tiger from the Deadly Hands of Kung Fu Omnibus 2. I'm loving both of them. Yeah, those Deadly Hands of Kung Fu omnibuses are gems. They're incredible. There's so much good stuff. 70s heart or 90s heart. Oh, God. Well, we've established through my conversations with Kane on this show that I am obsessed with heart. I'm so happy they're finally getting their due. I think they're one of the greatest bands of all time. They're almost, it's funny because it's always Ann and Nancy Wilson, but they're almost two different bands. 70s Heart is a very specific kind of band, which I love. I mean, they're Led Zeppelin. They're doing their version of what those two women would do, having been huge Led Zeppelin fans, which turns into its own thing. But that's part of what they're coming from. In the 80s, they were the most famous rock band in the world for a while. Like, they were the #1 selling. Their concerts were huge. And because the 80s became so immediately uncool when grunge happened, it's almost like we collectively have amnesia that Heart was like the biggest band in the world. I have listened to every Heart album. Another artist I have every album, but some of those 80 albums are like straight hits. That album from 1985, I want to say, they're self-titled. It has These Dreams on it. Does that also have Never and What about love? Care about you. These Dreams, one of my favorite songs of all time. Sung, by the way, by Nancy Wilson, not Ann Wilson. Written not by them, written for them. But yeah, I love Heart. So I don't know. I think there are more recognizable songs on the not 80s Heart albums because there were so many singles. Sometimes when you listen to a 70s one, you'll be like, I don't know any of these. They're still incredible. I love them because I think the acoustic guitar is more up front in those, and I'm an acoustic guitarist primarily, so that's cool. But so yeah, that's my opinion on Heart. Okay, I think, oh my gosh, there's so many more amazing. Oh, P and F is Phineas and Herb. Ferb. I still don't know what that means. Okay. Oh, you know what? There's only like a handful more comments. We're just gonna do them. Okay. Yes, saying that the inside was tech. What type of mall? I don't know. Just a mall from the 80s, a shopping mall. Gremlins 2, we're talking about. Gremlins 2 being in a mall is how you know it's 35 years old. Superjock, one of my things that I enjoy about New Zealand is the malls are still malls. Like the malls in Wellington, well, not the one, but the malls in Wellington, actually they do, some of them feel like crummy malls from the 90s. Some of them feel like cool malls from the 90s. Malls in the States are like largely a shell of what they were. And I was somebody who went to the mall all the damn time. Like just to walk, I didn't have a lot of money to spend there. But New Zealand malls give me major 90, was it an office building? Why do I want to say that they were shopping? Maybe there was like something with stores and an escalator in my mind, Mandela effect. Maybe I'm thinking of Mannequin, which was shot in Wanamaker's in Philadelphia. In my mind, Gremlins 2 was in a mall. Okay, we're almost at the bottom. Most collected editions have all the variant covers at the back of the book as well, right? They're not exactly limited in my world. The Phineas and Ferb covers are just 3 of them. X-Men 17, Avengers 27, and FF 33. Well, after this stream, I will learn what Phineas and Ferb is. Quincanito was like, it's a combo. It was a mall on the bottom. And it's like a mullet, but it's party on the bottom, business on the top. Okay. Time to get back to some comics. Let me get my next PDF going and talk about what's upcoming. So I am on Near Mint Condition tomorrow at about 6 o'clock in the evening for a Superman evergreen, but I did not do the reading because I just have not read enough Superman, and I tried to crack into it, and I was like, Omar, there's not enough time for me to become a Superman expert in the 3 weeks leading to this show. So we invited some extra special guests. There are some people that have never been on the Evergreen stream ever before, and there are some people that you have seen on Evergreen but not for a long time. And that is going to be tomorrow. And then back here on Sunday, I suppose. If I do all the reading, we will see if I make it. So let's keep going, shall we? I have to find my credits. Where did my credits PDF go? Oh no. Where is the credits? Credits. Okay. Oh, I understand, because I closed it. Okay, I didn't read The Incredible Hulk. This cover is spectacular, but I just don't particularly care. I don't read Into the Unbeing by Zach Thompson because I don't really like his writing, although I'm very tempted because this is Hayden Sherman's 3rd title. This is The Insurgent Iron Man, and I have a lot to say about this title today, so buckle up, kids. So this is by Spencer Ackerman with art from Julius Ota, although Michael Dowling does some pages in this one, colored by Alex Sinclair and letters by Joe Caramanga. I realize that I think what Spencer Ackerman is doing here is this is written like it's an Iron Man novel. Like it has really deep thoughts in it about capitalism, about war, about what it means to be a leader of people, of a company in the world. And I think that Spencer Ackerman has great takes on all of that, especially as a journalist. I think he brings so much grounding and real world into it. In retrospect, now that we're all the way at issue 8, the thing that it feels like to me is that, right, this is issue 8, is that he had all of that, and then he went back and he tried to make it feel comic booky and inserted some comic booky adventures into it at the beginning, and that actually slowed it down. I think actually if we could have started with something more like what's this arc, or just took out some of that filler stuff, it just would have come off better, because to me this is one of the most interesting issues. But also I like heroes being grounded in bureaucracy. I mean, this is Iron Man trying to decide how to put down a strike at his company that he doesn't want to put down. Why would he put down the strike? He's actually in favor of the reason they're striking, but he's trying to negotiate with the people on strike while he's also being a hero. And in the same way that Peter Parker's always out there screwing up, people striking are like, these are our jobs. Every time Stark Industries is bought or sold or corporate taken over, these are our jobs and our lives, and and you have enough money that it doesn't make a difference to you. That is such a great beat, and it grounds Iron Man in the world in a way that is very pleasing, and I think the way that the first Iron Man movie was very pleasing for a very similar reason. I do feel it's too little too late, and you can really just feel this come apart every time there's going to be some kind of conflict. It just feels really clear that this is like Spencer Ackerman wants to write a Newsweek article, an Atlantic article about Iron Man, but instead he's trying to like shoehorn in comic beats. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he doesn't think he's doing that at all. But there are a lot of things to appreciate about this run, and this current arc, The Insurgent Iron Man, is making me appreciate them. Plus, I just love how Julius Oda draws the armor, and I always like Michael Dowling. So this was probably my favorite issue of this book. Even the talking scenes like this one just really didn't drag at all. Tony says, you don't understand. I don't have a choice here. The missiles have to come online. I want you to do that for a fair wage. But if I have to automate the entire factory, and then the guy who works for him says, then you'll just fire 800 people? That's you saving us from Dr. Doom, huh? No, Mr. Stark. We're not working another minute without a contract. And the price just went up. We have time. Our walkout fund has it like that. We just got some big donations before. And then he's like, big donations. And then it kind of like all unravels. But I like this idea that Tony Stark, he's playing chess on like such a 4D high up level that he's like, no, what I'll do, even though I care about workers' rights, is automate the factory to get the bombs that I need to give to Dr. Doom so he remains in a standoff with the terrorists. And the guy is like, I literally work here. That to me is really, really interesting. Jim Henson presents, is this comic book over yet? I don't know if I can keep buying it, especially because now I'm made to the end of this wretched Dark Crystal story that I just have not really been enjoying by Sean and McGuire, illustrated by Count Andrea. You can't make out heads or tails of it. I mean, at least in the Skeksis found the other kind of guy and they hugged. I mean, if that's what we've been waiting to happen, Jesus, good Lord in heaven. 4 issues to get to them hugging, I guess maybe it was worth it. The good story here was the Farscape story written by Darcy Little Badger, illustrated by Simona Di Gianfelice. And I just thought it was pretty clever. It's about one of these places where everybody's got a universal translator, and in Farscape it's like a fungal infection or something in their body that translates. But what happens when like a biological instant translator stops working and you're in space with all of these different aliens? I felt like there were a few opportunities for it to like land the joke a little bit better than they landed the joke, but it was a fun story. But I cannot say that that made it worth the price of admissions here. This I did enjoy a little labyrinth thing here, which it doesn't, it's credited on the credits page as Dark Crystal, but it's Labyrinth, written by Cam Chittock. But it was just like a funny, babysit. Does that mean sitting on a baby? Like there was nothing to it. And then the Fraggle story was all about doozers and doozers building their buildings that taste like radishes, which was very, very cute, drawn by Jared Cullum, written by Megan Brown. But it just was like, I don't know if I ever, like in this life, needed to read this. Confused Magic Duck giving us some really good context on this Iron Man book, which is that in an interview, Ackerman mentioned the Insurgent Iron Man was his original pitch, and the first 5 issues were made to fill time. I enjoyed the series. It's a shame it's ending after issue 10. So I was right. Sometimes you can feel these things. Sometimes you can intuit these things. You can absolutely feel that the first 5 issues was him spinning wheels to get to the book that he wanted to write. And I just think, let the people write what they want to write. I think if this had started here, maybe it would have done poorly in this market, because I do think the book's like a little weird and slow for this story. But I think the people that were going to like it would have found it and liked it. I think so many of those people already checked out that this has kind of missed its shot as a whole. And that's unfortunate. This was the last thing on my list this week because I'd never read the first series of The Killer Affairs of the State. And I just didn't have the energy to like break ground in a whole nother series. So if you've read the original one, please let me know. Was it good? Might I like it? And maybe I'll catch up on this for next week. I want to find this. This was another one that I saw very, very close to Showtime, LCS. It's about like a future apocalypse, but it's specifically about your local comic book store in the future apocalypse. Love this cover. Love that concept. I didn't even have time to look it up on Global Comics. So if I can find it on Global Comics or anywhere else digital, I absolutely will read it. I did read Marvel Meow. We don't start the counter for this one. Blade's daughter, Bloodline, goes with her cat to find a magic flower. Great use of vertical scroll. Like this is all one continuous scroll. From this page, she sees the cave, she walks into the cave, meow, she goes into the cave, and then you can see that it keeps going as they continue walking through the page. This artist that does this book, Now Fuji, is so good. And God bless Marvel for keeping them employed doing this Marvel Meow book. I just want to see them draw one full issue of something because their characters are so good. I mean, they draw adorable cats, but the character work is really, really great too.
I read Medieval Spawn. This is a mini-series taking us back to the origins of Medieval Spawn, written by Rory McConville with art from Marco Itri, color from Ulysses Areola, and letters from Annual Design. And I'm just going to say the same thing. First of all, this second cover by Jonathan Uribe Castro with Steve Cannon, incredible. Love. But I just have to say that it's just so, it doesn't feel like it's about Medieval Spawn. It just feels like a story that could be about any mysticky, hellish knight in any medieval setting. There's monks. They think it's bad that the Knight of the Land is a hellspawn. Monks would think that. So they want to overthrow their leader so that they will be encouraged to go and fight the spawn. And meanwhile, the spawn is like, we're adventuring through the land. It's just so vague. The art is fine. The colors are fine. The script is fine. But it's like Medieval Spawn. Look at him. Look at him. You could write a better comic about this character, Rory McConville. It's way too small ball and way too inspecific to be about this guy that you see on that cover right there. I realize, by the way, that I'm pointing towards my screen, but yeah, this is the direction it is for you, right? I'm pointing at it. Okay, great. I'm glad we had that talk. So now we come to Moon Knight. Guys, friends, countrymen. The Devmalia Pramanik is the most exciting artist at Marvel right now. I wanted to just do this whole book for you, issue by issue, panel by panel, because every panel was that spectacular, colored by Rachel Rosenberg. But I want you to go buy it or read it somehow that you pay for. So I'm not going to do that. First of all, nobody at Marvel right now is doing Pramanik's page layouts. Just like using the chains as the panel, the slices, the earth. It's very J.H. Williams III. Absolutely obsessed. Rachel Rosenberg's still doing that amazing glow on Moon Knight, but then to see that glow on Moon Knight on the same page is a very different kind of lighting. So cool. But just, I mean, it's not just the panel layouts, and it's not just Rachel Rosenberg's brilliant, brilliant colors. It's just the characters, their stances, seeing them at different levels. So many different comic artists will just always put you at eye level with the character. We're always looking them at the eye. Here, we're below them, we're above them, we're looking them at the eye. They've got something between us. We see them in the reflection. Pramanik is just playing so much with where we are as the viewer on the panel. Look at this. Look at this dragon. Now, we've established already on the show that I am an easy mark for dragons, but look at the scope of it. Look how it has Moon Knight chained. And if you think you understand that this is Moon Knight versus the dragon, you don't understand, because Jed McKay's story is so smart. It's all about this sword. It's the sword that killed the Midnight Mission. And there's a reason it was able to kill a whole building. And this is the origin of the sword, but also how Moon Knight gets the sword on his side. It is absolutely incredible. Every page of this is worth the full price of admission. It is incredible. Queen Cognito saying Pramanik and Rachel Rosenberg is a killer combo. The body language, the points of view, the way characters get stood out from the background, the insane scope. I could not agree more. This is a superstar in the making, and you could be reading that superstar drawing Moon Knight every month right now if you would start reading Moon Knight. I dropped Moonshine Big Fight. I reviewed it at length last month, but basically there was no heart in the middle. It was all gags. The gags were very funny. The world was very silly. It didn't obey our normal world rules, but at no point did we slow down enough to find any heart of that character. And some people like an all gag comic book. More power to you if you do. For me, there just wasn't any reason to keep reading. It was like, okay, that was a book full of gags. The end. We know that I don't love kaiju stuff and I don't always love Godzilla, but I'm very tempted by this Sophie Campbell Mothra book because the covers are so lovely. They make Mothra look so huggable. Then I read The New Gods. Okay, I hope, Bunk, if you're here, put in your earplugs, put on your headphones that are not playing Crisis. I hated this comic book so much, and it made me realize something about myself. Because, when I hate a comic book, as I do hate this comic book by Ram V, with his recent collaborator Philippe Andrade on most of the art, and just a little bit of Evan Cagle art, which is who I'm actually here for, it made me realize that ultimately in a comic book, want a comic book that's going to tell me what it's doing. It's not that I'm not smart. It's not that I don't like things that are subtle. But I don't like a comic book that's very impressionistic. And if you're giving me art that's impressionistic, where I really have to squint to try to decide what's happening in the art, and then if you also give me a story that's maybe about life or death and the journey between life and death and how that journey can extend or be protracted, no. Tell me what you're telling in your story. But that's a me thing. And that doesn't mean this comic book is bad. There are reasons this comic book is bad. I think the fact that I couldn't tell who any character was on any given page, that's one of the reasons it's bad. But the storytelling isn't necessarily bad. I just never will vibe from that. And Ram V doesn't always do that. But I just need a comic with a stronger thesis statement. And I'm starting to feel like I am now understanding that better about myself now that I'm articulating this for you every week, and we've almost been through a full year of comic books. Because I think in the past I would just say, I hate this. And then somebody else would be like, how dare you hate it? You just have hot takes. And I'd be like, oh, I guess I do have hot takes. But no, it's a very consistent take for me. I like books that have a thesis. I don't mind if the book is driving you towards the thesis and revealing the thesis. But if the book is kind of like, find the thesis statement, that tends to piss me off. And I think that's why I don't like a lot of Ram V comic books. It's why I don't like a lot of Grant Morrison comic books, because they're those authors who play with those kind of more ephemeral themes, or like the kind of like find it in the reading. And I want to read a comic book about a character doing a thing. That's just the kind of comic book I like. So Comic Pals, which usually is Sean when Comic Pals shows up, who I want to hang out with so bad, I need to be caught up so I can do these things, have been feeling very out of the loop on New Gods for exactly what I'm saying. Okay, so it's not just a Crisis hot take. It's a lukewarm take because we've spread the warmth around, and the law of thermodynamics have meant that some of that warmth has evaporated. It doesn't have similarities in artwork to Kirby. It's just not the same. And that's the thing. Like, I get that this was the plan and they knew that they wanted to. I mean, it's objectively cool, but what is happening on this page? I know that it's the black racer and he's racing, but like, what? Go back and compare this to Moon Knight. And the amount of depth we were getting from everything on Moon Knight. I'm not saying that Philip Andrade has to draw like Dev Pramanik, but I'm saying compared to how much I got from that page, what are you getting from this page? Nothing. Then having Evan Cagle, look at how good he draws Wonder. I want to cry. It's so good. And I get that the reason we have these guest artists is because we're telling two halves of the story. And I also appreciate that the other half of the story kind of has met the main half of the story. So maybe we're going to get like a few Evan Cagle only issues after this. But it's just, when this is how good the art is, and this is the level of storytelling that I know exists in 4 pages of this issue, you cannot make that other stuff fly. Plus, we've gotten so far afield from the idea of like Mr. Miracle versus the New Gods, or like New Birth on Earth. And I get that it's all going to be connected in the end, but I just don't have the patience. I just don't. Quinn Canito is saying, this is good insight because I'm very much the guy who loves all the nonsense from Ram V and GMO, because I do love being confused. Well, and that's why I don't like all of their comics, and you might like all of their comics. Somar is saying, sup, familiar with G.I. Joe Transformers crossover comics? What's the story about? Yo, dude, we talk about every Energon Universe comic book. Unfortunately, there's none this week. But I talk about Void Rivals, G.I. Joe, Transformers. You can start any of them from scratch. They're all fantastic. You can see me reviewing them every week. I talked about Transformers in the last week's show, but we got to keep it pumping and talk about more new comics. And James Moore, people disagree with me. I could not disagree more about just wanting to read a character doing a thing. And I'm not saying it has to always be like, I put my glass down, I pick up my guitar. Like there can be books that have mystique to them, but I just don't like impressionism in comic books. I don't want to have to decide what I feel about it by standing back from it and then going close to it and then squinting it. I like it in modern art. You take me to an art museum that has that. In a comic book, I have less patience for it, but that's me. That's my take. That's where I come from. Okay, let's continue to Nightwing. Now, last issue of Nightwing was my pick of the week, I believe. It was incredible. It's written by Dan Waters with this 2-issue arc from Francisco Francavilla on art with Wes Abbott letters. This one was it was fine. It was good. It was better than fine. It was good. But it was a little bit softer because the first one had such a cool story about police work that it was like it was Bloodhaven Central. It was detective a detective book and a crime noir book, but set in Bloodhaven, where Nightwing was just at the edges of that story. This one has to get us to the end of the story, so this one just out of necessity has to focus on more characters. It focuses on Maggie Sawyer. That's fun. I like Maggie Sawyer. I love this artwork. I love these colors. I love how pink her hair is versus how orange everybody else is. I love the talking about like what makes a hero. Is Superman a hero that we want to emulate? Why would we want to emulate him, but maybe Batman or maybe Nightwing or maybe not Batman or Nightwing? And I just think Frankville is the master of this kind of artwork, but it just, it was the resolution. I think if you read the previous issue and this issue all in one, 2 issues, special oversized issue, it would be intensely satisfying. This issue on its own, disconnected from that other one, was fine. The reason I really liked it is because it just gives us a little bit more texture to Dan Waters' version of Bloodhaven. And at the beginning, it was feeling very standard issue. We've read this Nightwing book before. Now it's starting to feel like a unique place to me. And so that is something that I'm specifically liking about it. I don't read Null Hunter by Michael Walsh, which is an Olympus saga. It's a space punk version of Hercules. However, I did read Out of Alcatraz, and I once again am imploring you to read this incredible book written by Christopher Cantwell with art from Tyler Crook. This is about escapees from Alcatraz, which is a thing that happened in real life, except for in real life we think they drowned. In this book, it supposes, what if they didn't drown? And so now we're following them, and like, what is your expectation for what you're going to be doing if you just escaped from the most notorious prison in the United States? What life do you think you're going to have? Clearly your face is in the papers, but this is in the 1960s, so it's not like there's internet, and even every newspaper is not as widely spread or available, and after that story dies off in the news, their images are gone. So they're just like, we've just got to lie low for a little while, but they're getting sucked into other crimes because of course criminals help the criminals break out of jail. And it's not like they're just going back to a good life in altruism. So they find that they've been hired to work on this ranch, but the work is actually murdering the rancher's wife because the rancher actually married into ranching. And he's afraid if she ever loses him, he's going to be married out of ranching. And so now these people who just escaped being in prison are like, do we really want to murder this lady? Is that what we're doing with ourselves right now? Meanwhile, there's this amazing plot about these 2 FBI agents, or one is a federal marshal and one is an FBI agent, and they're queer. They're very queer for each other, and they both know that, and they have had a relationship in the past, but they're like, we're moving up in the world of the FBI. And if you've ever watched Clue, you know how the world was for people in government who were homosexual at that time. That's partly a joke, but partially true, because Clue is very much about that. And the one of them is like, what if we pursue this case all the way and we find these people who escaped Alcatraz, we're going to be the heroes of the town. And we can be the heroes of the town as 2 individual investigators, but we cannot be heroes of the town if we're secretly together, because people are going to realize that we're together. So you can have one or 2 things. You can solve this crime and we can not be together, or you can just give this up and we can just stay small time in the bureau and we can maybe live together and keep it under the radar. And the 2 of them just longingly looking out in this mountain, and the guy says, it's pretty out here. It's the kind of place where you get a cabin with the one you love and just watch the world go by. The whispers and the looks away from all of that and the hiding. That sounds just like a different kind of hiding, the other guy says. Holy shit. Perfect comic book. Perfect. It's a perfect comic book. And I don't think you just have to love queer stuff to like it. It's just a very interesting comic book about the thing I said to somebody last night. I was talking to about it. It reminds me, in Mad Men, like we find out the whole past of Don Draper and like how he's not all that he's cracked up to be. Spoilers, but I won't say how. It's like a comic book about those people who are on the outsides of the society of the 60s who can't get in. They're on the outside of the window looking into like the cool, hip, prosperous 60s that are happening, and they can't access that for whatever reason. That's what this comic book is. Okay. Prodigal Son I don't read, but that little partner's got a gun, don't he? I'm not caught up on Redcoat. Maybe in a week where I had a whole week to read, I could have read a little bit more of it, but this was a sprint to get to here. I am going to eventually get there. First, I'm going to catch up on Geiger, and then probably drop it after I catch up because I don't like it. And then I'll do the same thing for Redcoat. Guys, buckle up. Sean, did you read RoboWolf 4 weeks ago? Okay, stick with me here. It's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game, video game cabinet. But it's a whole comic book that exists in that world of Ninja Turtles. But it's also like colored by Lisa Frank. It's like a Lisa Frank Trapper Keeper version of the world inside of the Teenage Mutant. I'll just start the timer now while I'm already ranting. Inside of the Teenage Ninja Turtles video game. And also it's incredibly foul-mouthed and violent. So it's like Ninja Turtle. We're in a R-rated, hyper-bloody red band version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game video cabinet. But these are all the people in the world. It's not a Turtles book, but it just reminds me of that. It's not even like from the comics of Turtles or whatever. It reminds me of the Turtles video game specifically, colored by Lisa Frank, and you're keeping it inside of a Trapper Keeper. This is what it looks like. And the people that are this guy's, it's so funny. This guy, he's just trying to be a dad, not the skeleton guy, Robo-Wolf. He's a Robo-Wolf. He's a wolf who's a robot. What else do you need to know? And he's trying to be a good dad for his little Lindsay. And to be a good dad, he's got to get her the doll that she wants. But then she winds up being kidnapped. So now he's got to get the ransom to get her back so he can give her the doll that she wants and be a good dad. But he's got a kind of crazy crew, including a guy who's got like a decapitated head and just as a skull. And that guy is bad news. And also his driver. And his driver has no patience for anybody's shit. She just needs to drive and drive fast. So it's like the most ridiculous crew. They're being chased through the city. They're doing so much violence. And he's like totally blithe to everything. He gets his daughter a screwdriver and she goes, a screwdriver and a lot of styrofoam. Neat. Don't you remember that time I was working on the van with a screwdriver? I could tell how interested you were, and so I got you your own. It even comes with the manual so you can learn how to use it. And then she's like, maybe we could use it together. And he's like, I'm pretty busy with work. Something about it it's not just because I'm a dad. It's just, look at this art. Look at it. It makes me crazy. It makes me feral. These colors, it's written by Jake Smith. It's also illustrated by Jake Smith. Jake Smith, who are you? Okay. I've got to get you into my life, Jake Smith. And I guess he did the colors too. Jesus, Lord Jesus. And the letters? Jake Smith is doing this all himself. It's, I laughed so hard. And you know, I don't always go for like hyper violent and like there were some sex jokes in it. And like, you know, sometimes I come off as like prude crisis. No, this was the perfect tone because it was just a little pinch of everything. It was a pinch of Terminator, it was a pinch of Ninja Turtles, it was a pinch of, you know, it just had a little bit of everything. And the colors, I don't even think I'm being fully articulate. I'm struck speechless by how intensely stupid it was. I loved it so much. Okay, and every page was that cool looking. Now we get to Rogue Sun. Here's the thing I'm going to say about Rogue Sun. And by the way, I read issue 1 and issue 2, and then I jumped to issue 25. But this book has a terrific recap page that like really catches you up on what's been happening. So I've been really appreciating that. This is the one book on the stands right now that has like big Spider-Man energy. And what I mean by that, it is very much about heroes learning to be heroes and screwing up and being teenagers about it. No other book on the stands is doing it like this book is doing it. It's so pleasing. It's written by Ryan Parrott and Nick Cotton with art from Abel and Bruno Frenda. The art is really great, and I just love this trope. It really, really works that both of these people have this Rogue Sun suit, which is kind of like a magical Iron Man suit, more or less. Every time you get the suit, you get somebody in it that's talking to you. It's very Exo Manowar. It's very, you know, Friday or Jarvis inside of the Iron Man suit. But it's actually a literal person who has had the suit before. And so the one kid has his dad, which is he's estranged from, so that's tense. And the girl just has this crazy violent psychopath from the 1300s who had the suit. And she's like, how do you don't know what I'm talking about going to a party with a DJ. And he's like, I picked it up from context. But they can't see each other's invisible person. That totally worked for me. I love the teen drama of it. It doesn't feel like egregious teen drama written by some old writer with a skateboard over their shoulder going, hello, fellow kids. It actually feels like teen drama to me, an old person with a skateboard over my shoulder. But it really, really works. And then when they get together and they have to have a fight, this villain's color scheme is so fun, taking us right back to that classic purple and green means bad guy from the 60s. And I just love that, like, they're all figuring it out, and because they're always figuring it out, and they haven't yet made those hard choices of with power comes responsibility. It's very like Spider-Man Year One caliber. Sometimes the enemies put one over on them because the kids are not being responsible enough, and sometimes the kids beat the shit out of the enemies because they don't see any moral problem with that. And I love the swings that gives us. This is a very fun series. I don't generally like a lot of the other Massive Verse. You do not have to be reading all of the Massive Verse. This plays fine on its own, and I think it's written to a very, very high quality. Every time I see a cover of this RuneScape Untold Tales of the God War series, it just looks so amazing to me. But I just can only read so many things, and one of those things I read is Risk by Blackbox Comics. This is on Global Comics. It's written by D.G. Chichester, who you know from Daredevil, possibly, with pencils and inks from Mannix Francisco, who I must say is really damn good, and colors from Lorenzo Bardini, letters by Leo McGovern. This, if you didn't see me talking about it last month, it's a world where there was an awful disease that came unfrozen from our melting glaciers, and it was a flesh-eating disease, so everybody got their flesh ate, and now they all have cybertronic implants, so everybody's a cyborg of some kind, and this lady who loves betting and the odds has a cyborg in her brain that's talking about the odds to her, so she's got her own AI, but it turns out she's also kind of a badass, so we get to see her in action in this. The action is drawn so well. The figure work from Mannix Francisco, it's like so not just like muscular, but I just love the way his characters take up space. They feel like they're really in motion. It's not that he's adding a lot of motion lines. It just really feels like they have weight and heft on the page. I love her swinging this bat at the guy, and the AI says target accuracy 87.7%, take the shot. I love that. It's a really, I mean, I'm already into this character, a character who always has the odds in her head of what the conflict is. It's kind of like Sage and X-Men, sort of. And in this conflict, as she does better and better in the fight, her odds are improving, but we're going to see it go in opposite directions too. But there's also this totally crushing beat where we've kind of been led to believe that like everybody's got cyborg implants, hooray, but no, all sorts of people don't. People who couldn't afford them, or people who just like have an ethical problem with being part machine, and so they're all living on the outs of society, and we go and explore that for a little bit this issue. And now we come to the crux of the plot at the end of issue 2, which is the person that's been manipulating her and playing the odds against her actually wants her help with something, and so that's going to lead us right into the big mission in issue 3. Perfect pacing from Chichester, perfect art, love this book. It's on Global Comics. You got to go check it out. Kane, you missed us talking about Heart, but you went to the gym, so it was worth the time. Okay, let's keep going because we got to finish up because I eventually do have to get to school pickup, although it's not Danger Zone yet. This is Sleep. It's by Xander Cannon, who does everything. He writes a whole endnote about how he's like, I don't got time for digital lettering. I just hand letter it as I go. This is such an interesting book. He's the artist behind Kaiju Max, if you ever read this. But his whole thing was like, that book was so big with such a big cast and so much loose continuity. This is the opposite. We're going to have a small cast. You're going to get to know them really well. The continuity is going to be super tight and planned, and everything in every panel is going to matter. I love that because it feels like we're reading a puzzle, and they absolutely kind of like give us a hint of that in the letters page of like, did you notice all the things you could have been puzzling together already? Why is it black and white, but only his glasses are red? But wait, it's not just his glasses. Some other things are red too. This guy's wristwatch is red. Why is his wristwatch red? It's not just accessories. Other people have accessories on. They're not red. As the book goes on, different things are red. But it starts out with this guy waking up and a cow has been massacred on his front step and his door is open and his cat is missing. So are we meant to believe that while he was asleep that he turned into a werewolf, opened the door, let his cat out and massacred this cow? Or did that come to his step for a reason and it wasn't actually him? Or does it have a relation to what's going on in his sleep? No answers here. And if I have a critique of this, it was such a thrilling first 3 pages. I was like really, really tense, hands balled into fists reading the first few pages. Then it spends a long time introducing us to the community and the world. And to be fair, it works really well. It's really, really well drawn. The characters are really, instantly notable and not just in a this is somebody from stock casting way. Like they actually are good round characters, and I really like his hand lettering. I find this big bubbly lettering so easy to read and to drag my eye across. But I will say that I do wish we got to play the suspense beat from the beginning a little bit longer. I am a little worried that a book that starts this subtle is not going to have a big enough readership to give it the legs that it needs to get the, I assume, at least 12 or 15 or 20 issues to tell what the story Xander Cannon has in mind. But I'm intrigued. This is not the best thing that I've ever read, but I'm definitely intrigued. I don't read Spectrum. Great cover, though. I did read Spider-Man and Wolverine, and you know, me and Mark Guggenheim, you just never know. You never know if I'm going to like it or not. You never know how I'm going to feel about him this given month. This time, I loved it. We gotta start with the art from Carrie Andrews with colors from Brian Reber. This art, I have not seen somebody do a very Eric Larson, Todd McFarlane Spider-Man for a while in a Marvel comic book, and Carrie Andrews is just giving it to us. He's giving us that Spider-Man. That Spider-Man with his crotch out and his legs spread and his arms going every which way and his Todd McFarlane weird foot that's not the actual shape of a foot, and I friggin' love it. And that can happen because Carrie Andrews is a chameleon. He changes his art in everything. He's so good at so many different styles. I've seen him do like 8 different styles I can think of in different comic books. And Mark Guggenheim wisely kind of just gets out of the way. Like, he writes enough Wolverine and Spider-Man that it's funny. He's got the quips. He's got the thwips. It's not quite to the level of Jason Aaron's Wolverine and Spider-Man yet, but it's a good first issue. There's a good reason for Wolverine to come and be like, join me on this mission, Spider-Man. It's grounded in the existing world of Spider-Man. This is his kind of a girlfriend, kind of not girlfriend from the Joe Kelly run, so it's happening right now. And then the cliffhanger, which James Abel just brought up. What a cliffhanger, but the issue had way too many flashbacks. The art had a 1990s mixed with 2000 vibe. I do think it had too many flashbacks, and I was getting a little bit lost in the flashbacks for a while, but I think the issue had a good reason to do them. You've really got to make a good excuse for me to have a whole, like, many pages of either flashbacks or hallucinations. I don't know if this justified it, the page length perfectly, but it was drawn really well, and it did justify it. But the cliffhanger was a very good cliffhanger. I'm not going to spoil it for you. I think maybe Mark Guggenheim went off and, I don't know, maybe he had a long vacation. Maybe he stayed at that hotel in Thailand from White Lotus. I don't know. But he really seems reinvigorated now compared to what he was before. Do I think you should buy that X-Men by Mark Guggenheim omnibus? No. I don't read Star Trek Defiant. I did read Star Wars Legacy of Vader. It was very hard to pick Moon Knight over this as my Marvel pick of the week because Stefano Raffaele went off on the art in this. Art's what puts it over the top. I like a lot of comics and how they're written, but if you can make me gasp out loud every single page with your art, then we're cooking with gas. Charles Soule, as we know, is the foremost writer of villains, but this beat, Kylo Ren goes back to Naboo, and he's like, whatever, I know my dad was from here, but he doesn't fully understand everything that happened with Vader on Naboo. He doesn't understand how it transformed Anakin, and he's in the places. He's standing in the spots that Vader stood, and he's got this person that's with him, Vanny, who is like Vader's valet, who's now like, you know, trying to recreate something of Vader because he's obsessed with Vader. And Kylo Ren is like, I don't care about this shit. Show me where Vader was powerful. And Vanny's like, you don't understand. Because Vader learned to love something unconditionally here, this is what allowed him to have the power. Because once you love something unconditionally, you are willing to seek out unconditional power in order to protect it. The art conveys the acting and the likeness of Adam Driver as Kylo Ren so well. It has so many great little glimpses of moments that he's seen and that Vader have seen, so that we've seen as the audience throughout it. I think this was Star Wars personal psychodrama at the highest level, making me care about a character I quite frankly don't care about. This book is really giving a lot of texture to Kylo Ren in a way that I did not know was possible. By the way, the colors here by Nolan Woodard, who I always love, letters by Joe Caramagna. But man, this Stefano Raffaele artwork, oh my goodness. This was another one where I could have easily showed you 10 pages. Star Wars The High Republic, I think this is the penultimate issue. And look, this book, I don't know how this is so much better than the main High Republic book, this High Republic Adventures, issue 18. But Daniel Jose Older just has this huge cast. And even when I've totally forgotten who they are and their name is and what they do, he immediately reminds me why I should like them every time they pop on the panel. That's the sign of a good writer. This doesn't even have a recap page, or maybe it does and I just forget. But, I read a lot of comics. I do not do well with a cast of like 20 characters that don't appear in any other media. I don't always do good remembering their names and stuff, but I always come back and I love them. But again, once again, Harvey Talabow's art here, colored by Michael Atiyeh. I'm just obsessed with it. Look at their faces. Look at the wildness of all of their hair. I just love it. And then like doing this parallelism of them in the cockpit. He's at this big gun. If he shoots the gun, he can take down the enemy spaceship that's bombing the city. But the explosion so close to the ground might kill all of the people in the air and the people in the ground, everybody he loves. He might save the planet, but he's going to destroy the city, which is what the person in the spaceship is doing anyway. As a Jedi, can he make that choice? Or does he want to just let his two best friends fly into the maw of danger and maybe get killed because he's too afraid to take the choice? That was an excellent comic book. You don't even have to care about these characters or High Republic. The drama and all the relationships and the heart is just built right in. And I will read Harvey Talabal drawing anything. I am obsessed with him. But unfortunately, then there is the main Star Wars High Republic, Fear of the Jedi #4, this never-ending pile of bullshit by Calvin Scott. I didn't know Star Wars could be this boring, especially in the middle of a big space fight, until Calvin Scott taught me about it. He might be a nice guy. You have to remember, when I yell about things being terrible, I'm never yelling about the people being bad people. I'm just yelling about them writing bad things. And I have endured so many bad things written by Calvin Scott over the past 3 years because he just has written the entire High Republic main continuity, and it's all so boring. How does the decadent phase of the Jedi, where there's tons of them and they're actually closer to Green Lanterns than at any other point in the Jedi, how could it be this boring for this long? We have Jedi that are giant lizard people. We have a Jedi who's an amoeba who splits himself between multiple X-Wings. That should be the most interesting fight ever, but instead I am like yawning. I actually fell asleep twice reading this and finally just went to sleep for the night and woke up at 4 a.m. so I could keep reading because it was so bored that it literally put me to sleep. What is wrong with you, Calvin Scott? We're heading towards this end state of the High Republic. Do you know what the Jedi fear? They're just being made to fear things, and so they see these cool space creatures ripping apart their planes, which would be cool. We never really see in Star Wars somebody like fighting something that's like a space dragon. So I was like, oh wow, this is cool. No, it's just them hallucinating it. All the stuff is just them hallucinating. None of the battles mattered. Nothing matters in this whole series. It's stupid. And the way that I care about every character in High Republic Adventures, because every script in that book makes me care about them anew, even if I've forgotten who they are in between the issues, this could not be more opposite. I absolutely remember who they are, and I can't bring myself to care about them in every issue because Calvin Scott's writing is so boring and absolutely lacking in character development. Now we come to Superior Avengers. This is by Steve Fox, and the thing is, there is such a good rug pull at the end of the first issue of the Superior Avengers book, and I don't want to totally spoil it for you if you haven't been reading it yet, but there's a reason we don't recognize any of these characters. There's a reason that's Onslaught that's not Onslaught. There's a reason that's a Megalith that's not the current Megalith. There's a reason for all of this. And the first issue explains it really well, but it was such a rug pull at the end of that issue that it's just going to be hard to get back to that level here, but that's fine. Steve Fox, I think, has paced himself really well, and he's been given a lot of very tough work at Marvel where he's got to like introduce all new characters or he's got to like start up a whole new team, and it's often very thankless, right? But I think Steve Fox understands how to write a book well, and I just think he gets dealt some very strange hands from Marvel that he's got to figure out how to work. Who knows? Maybe he's pitched every one of them, but some of them just feels like he got the assignment. This time, he's got some magic. There's these interludes drawn by Kyle Holtz, which is a very different look and feel than the rest of the book, drawn by Luca Maresca, but it actually works because of what the interludes are. It should look dark, and there's one page I couldn't use because it was too big of a spoiler and I didn't want to use it in the show, but I just was like, damn, Kyle Holtz. But then in the present day, we have this version. They're kind of the Thunderbolts in a way because they're like bad guy Avengers that Doctor Doom, I can at least say this, he brought them from the future of his future, of the future of the world under Doom, because if they're the people who would be the defenders of his world in the future, of course they would help him want to create that world now in the today. But there's a lot of wrinkles to that. I enjoyed it mildly. I'm hoping that Steve Fox has more of the juice that he juiced us up with in issue #1, because that was really, really fun. Okay, this might be the most I scream. Turn down your volume. Dan Slott wrote this horrible comic book with horrible art by Raphael Albuquerque and horrible colors by Marcelo Mayo. I'm so sorry, Dave Sharp, that you lettered it. It turns out that the free comic book day issue of Superman Unlimited #1 was literally just half of this issue. You would hope that maybe it would get better after that, but you would be wrong. The one good thing that this issue does is it gives you a somewhat coherent reassembly of what Superman's origins might be in the current DC universe, which do include him being Superboy and do include his John Byrne origin in 1987, which are two concepts that kind of clash. Superboy who joins the Legion and the John Byrne origin, but it's all together. But here's the thing, never send Dan Slott to do that. Dan Slott is not the continuity guy. He's not good at that stuff. Send Mark Waid to do that. The dialogue in this is so flat. The writing in this is so flat. The only thing it is going for it is that it recaps Superman's origins, which could have just been a one-shot written by a much better writer. The art, maybe it's just a style thing, but I think this art is hideous. I think the shading is hideous. The facial features are hideous. The ways he's like extends all of their features when they're in profile so that it sticks out from their face that far that I just could like pinch their whole nose and chin together. That's not, I have a big nose. I don't look like that in profile. I just think it was irrepressibly ugly. This Superman face, I don't want to read a Superman comic where Superman looks like that. So you have this writer, Dan Slott. I do like Dan Slott. I'm sorry, I've said his name 3 times. He's probably going to show up in my comments like Beetlejuice right now. I do like Dan Slott on things. I loved Spider-Boy. This has no feel to it at all. You know, at the beginning of Somebody to Love by Queen, he goes, I got no feel, I got no rhythm, I just keep losing my beat. That's what this feels like. Dan Slott has no feel or rhythm for Superman. He's just pounding Superman. He's just like, it's Superman, Superman. That's all, that's the only idea he has, is that it's Superman. It could not be more boring. It does not make me want to read it. And it's so ugly. It's so intensely ugly that I have trouble getting excited to even try to read an issue 2. It really took a lot for me to drop a book after #1, but I hated every second of this experience other than the recap. And the recap, the whole time I was thinking, Mark Waid would have done this so well. Okay. And a lot of people hated it. Wow. Hated that issue #1. Why does almost every issue this week deal with Flashback? I love Albuquerque's art, but man, Superman Unlimited aesthetically just doesn't look great. Okay, not a hot take, as it turns out. I don't read The Terminator by Declan Shalvey. I did read The Thing because I like Tony Fleecs a lot. Again, to James Abel's point, a lot of the books this week were flashback books. This is set at some indeterminate point and things pass, and it could not, I don't know if I need 30 seconds. It was just boring. It was boring. I didn't really like the art from Alex Sinclair. I don't know. Oh, Alex Sinclair color art, Justin Mason art. It just, I mean, he drew Thing well, and I think that's why he was hired, but like every other character looked bad. It just is like somebody gets kidnapped, and so they go to the Thing to talk about the kidnapping, because the kidnapping is somebody from Yancey Street. You know, what's interesting to me about it, if I can try to salvage something out of this, is that it's a reminder of why Thing was big at a time. Like, this kind of Thing story would have killed in 1973. There was a point then Thing and the idea that he had these connections to Yancey Street and he's a tough guy with a heart of gold. There was a point that that's what made him the best character in the Fantastic Four. Here, it's just boring. And I think the thing is that it's just a story that we've seen told for Thing already. I don't know if doing like a flashbacky series for Thing is actually where it's like, he's going to fight every villain. Do that with modern Thing. I think Thing today, who's a parent, Thing today, who's happily married, there's so many more legs to tell that story with the current Thing. To go back and tell that story at some point, I think before Franklin Richards was born, so that definitely puts us in the 70s. I just don't think there's anything to mine here, even for somebody as funny as Tony Fleecs. Thunderbolt's Doomstrike, this was, I'm so sorry that all of the bad books are grouped together here at the end of the alphabet. This may have permanently soured me on Jackson Kelly and Colin Lanning. Steve Rogers shows up. Tommaso Bianchi does not draw him well. Basically, this is like trying to prove the thesis statement of this book that like, Bucky's all about the revolution. You say you want a revolution, that's what Bucky's what about. It's challenging the status quo. No, it didn't make any goddamn sense. The whole story is him just yelling about like how we're taking this back. And then they're like, fix her and use your mind to control the Doombots. And then he does. And then Bucky's like, that's a revolution. That's the story. That's the comic book. That's why we got 5 issues. Sometimes Marvel just knows that they want a comic book to exist. And so they're like, make this exist to one of their writers, because it's got to just fill in a slot in the schedule. It's got to have a certain character while a certain movie comes out. And in this instance, Colin Kelly just did not find it. They just never found the reason it should have existed. And it was 5 incredibly painful issues of us being very aware as the reader that the writers of this book did not understand why the book they were writing existed. Now we come to Titans, and this is by the main artist on this book, Pete Woods, who does the covers as well. It's written by John Layman. This was the thing I've been really liking about this Titan run, is that I really love that every issue is an issue you could just pick up and read. It's just like Ultimates in that way. Like every issue is just an issue that you can enjoy with Titans, but it's giving you a little bit of seed of like what's going wrong with this team. Why are they dysfunctional even though they feel like they're so functional right now? By the way, love Wes Abbott's letters, and this is Balloon's really, really appealing to me. So recently the team resurrected the cyborg that they had defeated, not our cyborg, a cyborg, and they really are trying to rehabilitate her. Especially Cyborg and Starfire really have a lot put into this rehabilitation, but it's not going so well, and it's going to prove the chink in their armor that's ultimately going to like Deathstroke in and defeat them. It seems like we're headed for their downfall. Meanwhile, on the Watchtower satellite, the league is like, you're being irresponsible. I thought we're all part of the same league right now. That didn't really work for me at all. Like it felt like it was really in opposition to what the league is like right now, to be like, you're doing too much good on your own. We want more control. Especially to have Wonder Woman be the voice of that. It just doesn't feel like any of the other league books are saying that right now. Like it, as somebody reading the whole DC line, it just felt like a weirdly atonal, discordant note, because certainly that's not happening. And if it is happening, it would be Mr. Terrific saying that. To have Wonder Woman be the bearer of bad news, not just 'cause I love Wonder Woman, it just like didn't really make sense. So this was fine. I still really, really love this John Layman run. This issue itself was like, it was fine. It's clearly teeing up something, but I still like that it was a one-shot issue. Pete Woods' art is incredible. But I would say read the previous issue maybe. Okay, the Ultimates. I'm done with this book. I'm really, really close to dropping the Ultimate Universe. This is the big reveal. Okay, so the big reveal is that they all died, but Doom, who's actually this world's Reed Richards as Doom, but not the Maker. The Maker made this Reed Richards into Doom, so he fixed it. Like, okay, that's your big concept? That's the concept that time travel shouldn't be happening, but they used it one time, and what we're doing as the Avengers isn't working. We've got to go bigger. For Dennis Camp, who's been hailed as such a visionary writer, who's really playing with not only plot but also themes in such an interesting way. Now that I've gotten here and we're approaching the year mark, and I've also read his Assorted Crisis events, which I could not possibly hate more. Talk about a book that's all about metaphor and has no point to it whatsoever. No characters ever pick up a thing or just do a thing. I just have decided I actually hate this book. I just don't like it. I don't think it says anything. I think all that Dennis Camp has going for him is that he gets to reinvent every Marvel character who's not a member of the X-Men. And so he's going to keep doing that, and people are going to keep buying it and saying it's great, but it's not great. It's not great. And Federico Blee is back on his bullshit, because every page in this is blue. You can't even tell that what color Doom's cloak is. And I get that some of the motivated lighting here is blue, but no, I'm just done. I'm done. Speaking of things I'm done with, I'm so sorry all these bad books are at the end of the alphabet. This, I don't hate myself enough to keep reading Vampirella by Christopher Priest. I thought, I love Vampirella. Maybe there's a reason it's relaunching. I have never in my life read a book where an author hates not only the character, but the reader as much as Christopher Priest openly has contempt for all of us here. By the way, this has a very graphic sexual assault scene, but it actually says on this page, advisory, this issue contains a scene of possible sexual assault. I guess it's debated in the narrative. Reader discretion is advised. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do in a book that has a scene like that. Good job to the editors. It hates Vampirella so much that it won't let us close to her. And the whole crux of the Vampirella plot, and we get to see her for all of 2 pages in this number 2 issue, is that she has postpartum depression and she can't deal with it. That's basically, it's just Priest punching down on her. And there's a way to have a character, a female hero character, have postpartum depression and write an interesting story about that, but Priest just kicks her in the way that he's been kicking her for 3 years now, because he hates this character and he hates everybody who likes this character. So instead, the whole book is about her son, who time travels back from the future, and now he's in therapy with Vampirella's therapist, who is, by the way, Christopher Priest. And he's talking about how maybe one time he committed sexual assault, but maybe it wasn't his fault. Like, what is this book? It really feels like it's some kind of crazy con job to see how many months in a row Christopher Priest can get people to pay him while he's like BDSM style just using them in his target practice, as his punching bag. And I tuned back in for 4 issues, so they got my $16, but I am not coming back for a 3rd issue. This is offensive to the idea of what a Vampirella comic book could be, which is a wild thing to say about what's being offensive about Vampirella comics. But Christopher Priest is being such an asshole in writing this, and has been since 2019, that I think it has permanently soured me on Christopher Priest, who I used to like, because I've never seen a writer go full asshole as hard on a comic book in the actual pages of the comic book since he writes himself into it, as Christopher Priest goes full asshole here. Here's the 1 page of Vampirella we got in this issue. Congratulations. I don't read Vatican City by Mark Miller, but I do read Vision and the Scarlet Witch, the next of a string of series by Steve Orlando writing Scarlet Witch, and this was really good. Part of it is I just love Lorenzo Tometa's artwork. I liked him when he was on the book last year, the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver miniseries. Ruth Redmond colors really well, letters by Travis Lanham. This just works, and it works because it's a fun peanut butter and jelly effect of Steve Orlando doing that really cool thing he's always been doing with Wanda, where she's got cool magic. He does her narrative in the second person, but then he writes a very good Vision, and it must be said this is a very good, well-drawn Vision. And he like actually digs into Vision's past. Like Steve Orlando has some thoughts on who Vision is, not only from his ancient past, but also the Tom King series, and also the idea that like Wiccan and Speed are Vision's kids with Wanda, a beat that does not get played very well and very often in the comic books. And like clearly this is another one of those books that Marvel was like, hey Steve Orlando, you can write a Vision book if you get Vision into XYZ status quo, which we need him to be for synergy for other media right now. Fine. But Steve Orlando in this case was up to the task, and he's like, I've got your Vision book. And this was just, as somebody who loves these characters, I was really into it. Really enjoyed it. I think if you love Vision, if you love Tom King's Vision, if you've always wanted to go back to Scarlet Witch and Vision, but not with them being together romantically, but like them acknowledging their rich history together, but still being kind of like platonic, this issue gave me all of that. Yeah. I loved this conversation between them, and just like the gradual zoom in, you know, who knows if that came just from the script or if what's the darn artist name? It just flew out of my head. Lorenzo Tometa decided it. I don't know. And then to go super tight in their faces and then pan down to that same level of tightness and have it be their hands. Great choice, and a great way to make a talking head scene actually feel like it has motion because you're moving the camera. Like that's good comics making. That's smart people making a comic book. Next, we come to Weapon X-Men, because I don't read Walking Dead Deluxe, and this is unfortunately out of runway. It's going to be over with issue number 5, and this is issue number 4. This is the best issue of the series so far, and this is another one of those books where it feels like that Joe Casey maybe had an interesting pitch for the book that may have been this issue, which was really all about Cable and Chamber, 2 characters he has written before and has a great affection for. Not a lot of Wolverine and Deadpool, who clearly feel like they were shoehorned into the first 3 issues just to be on the cover more and to sell it well. But like this issue about Cable and Chamber just like not fully trusting each other and having to work out who's doing what sonic thing to whom in the middle of the mission in order to make the thing work. This was delightful. I would absolutely read this book, whether it is as a Weapon X book or as an X-Force book. I think the art has been pretty consistently good by Chris Cross, with a couple weird panels here and there. Inks by Mark Morales, colors by Yen Nitro, and letters by Clayton Cowles. It worked for me, but those first 3 issues are just so slow and boring. You can't wait for a 4th issue to have your best script in this current comic book environment. The stuff that's a hit right now, it's got to be a hit out of the gate. And unfortunately, Joe Casey missed his shot. He doesn't write a lot of big two, and he's a very slow, cerebral writer, as we can definitely see in his Blood Squad 7. And I just don't think he got there fast enough, and that's why the next one is canceled. But great art, a lot of fun, really enjoyed the issue, and great deep cut of an Avengers villain to bring back here. I didn't read Whatever Happened to Crimson Justice from Mad Cave by Frank Thierry. I did read Wonder Woman, and we know I don't like Tom King's Wonder Woman, but I'm trying, y'all. I want every comic to be a good comic. And so I read this issue because I read last issue with this art from Gilliam March. It was an all-timer. Wonder Woman investigating a murder that her mother has been framed for on Olympus and bringing Batman in, because who's a better detective than Batman? Well, Batman's kind of out of commission in this issue, and so the question is, can Wonder Woman be a better detective than Batman? And not just by lassoing people. Can she work it out? Can she put the clues together? So this is kind of Diana being Batman, but in more ways than one, because she's also feeling a lot of grief, and Wonder Woman is often so much about love, which is, I think, a thing that writers often get right about her, and when they don't, it makes me angry. But so we don't see her play grief that often, and Tom Tom King has set up an operatic story, which I hate, about how she's in grief right now, but he uses Batman here and the reasons we know about Batman's grief, about his parents, about various dead Robins, about Alfred, which, you know, is a thing that Tom King perpetrated. He uses that to help contextualize Diana's grief, so we're really seeing Diana through a Batman lens. It doesn't offend me at all as a big Wonder Woman fan. It's a neat trick to play, and it works out really well. And Gillian March sells the hell out of Tom King's 9-panel grids because he uses them in different ways, whether it's playing different sides of the same conversation or whether it's just playing Diana, tight on Diana, taking out her rage as a result of her grief throughout those 9 panels, and Aphrodite saying, this made me really think about what I was thinking about all of this week. Wonder Woman, must everything be a metaphor? Which is how I feel in a Ram V comic book. Aphrodite, we're gods. What else do we have? Which is me reading New Gods by Ram V. But I just think, I know Tom King writes the panels and so he has control over that, but I just think Gil and March like really, really sold it well for him here. And he's also coloring himself letters by Clayton Cowles. This is great. If you've been very skeptical of Tom King's Wonder Woman and you just want to see what can he achieve, I would definitely pick up issue 20 and 21. There's a new arc starting in 22. I'm on board tentatively for now. Maybe I just hated that first mega arc. Maybe I'm gonna like everything else about it. So, oh yeah, I mean, it might be my favorite Diana and Bruce scenes together of all time. It just really was really satisfying. And I love the mystery. The mystery unraveled in a really fun way. Okay, I don't read You Never Heard of Me. I think I tried to read it one week and I didn't get through it. And then in my mind, I decided that I dropped it instead of just that it was too close to the show and I didn't make it through it. So now I see it every time and I thought that I dropped it. And here's issue 4 or 5. Maybe when issue 5's come out, I'll finish reading issue number 1, which brings us finally to Zatanna by Jamal Campbell, which a lot of people earlier this week said was their favorite writer and their favorite artist right now. Look, this book is sumptuous. It's just so gorgeous. It's so fun. It's so beautiful. Jamal Campbell writing for himself. A lot of people when artists write for themselves, they don't give themselves interesting things to do because they just give themselves the thing they want to draw. And they might be great artists and they might be great at drawing what they want to draw, but it's like not as vital as if somebody else was challenging them to draw something that they maybe didn't want to draw. I never get that feeling with Jamal Campbell writing himself. I get the feeling that like actually no one knows how to push him as hard as he knows how to push himself, which is really, really remarkable. That said, this issue story-wise, I don't know that there was a whole lot going on here. It did feel like it was getting towards being an art jam rather than just a book that had a stronger narrative. But it does play out the idea that Zatanna, it's not just that she's being hurt by this spell, this magical sword that's stuck into her soul so she can't do her magic. It's that it's tearing her apart. But how do you use being torn apart to your strategic advantage? Are there times that a villain doesn't want to see you torn apart? Are there times that a villain themselves will be hurt if you are torn apart? And I really like that beat for Zatanna, that she's usually a character who's kind of on the happy-go-lucky side, even though she deals with a lot of dark and dramatic things. And here, there's almost the theme of like, she's doing self-harm by doing magic, but can she line up the shot so that if she does self-harm, she's also harming her enemies? You had to really dig for that. It was on the metaphor level, but I found it. And again, the art is absolutely incredible. And then I don't read Disney's Zootopia. And that is it. So glad we made it. Look how far we've come now, baby. It's gonna take a lifetime. I love that song by Shania Twain. One of my favorites. So let me just get a couple of your comments and then we're gonna wrap this puppy up. Okay, so I think I last saw it around Robo-Wolf. But before that, Lance McNair is saying, I agree on Grant Morrison for the most part, even though I tend to like a lot of what I've read from them. Also, I have to get going, unfortunately, so I'll be back and listen to the rest tomorrow. Comics Pal saying, Out of Alcatraz, one of my favorite comics on the stands. Yes, Sean. Totally love it. I will give that a chance. I've liked Cantwell's created stories, so Chris Brogan is on board with Sean and I. Robo-Wolf, James Abel said, this feels like Bebop and Rocksteady meet 1980s action movie with a mix of TMNT lore. See, and that's, James, why we go to counseling, why we care about this relationship, and why we're going to keep working on it together, because in the end, we understand each other on a deep down level, and that's why. And Comics Pals was seated for my pitch. Superjob was still relating to, and I think reacting to my read of that last page from Alcatraz. Yeah, I mean, Christopher Cantwell, he's a TV writer, and sometimes TV writers in comic books, they're missing the acting. Like a lot of TV writers are writing for people's mouths to say the words. And sometimes without the acting, it just doesn't hit. Christopher Cantwell over the past 5 years has really figured out how to make the characters act for him. And certainly Tyler Crook drawing really, really helps with that. A lot of people liked my comparisons on Robo-Wolf. Trapper Keeper, I haven't thought about this in a million years. Added to the to-read pile. And TMT arcade game sign me up. Yeah, it feels, there's just something special about that arcade game. Maybe it was because it was one of the first games of that type. It was, at that time, it was like a pretty advanced graphics arcade game. I'm showing my age here, but it was just so fun to step into that world and see the turtles roaming around in this, I guess was it 16-bit or 8-bit? I forgot what the original game was, but this like 16-bit version of their world rather than the cartoon, which we were all watching at the time. And Robo-Wolf feels like a comic of that 16-bit world, if that makes any sense at all whatsoever. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else. Kane talking about a great day at the gym. Yeah, you know, Guggenheim, Adrian, I have a guarded optimism. I always think people can improve. I'm always willing to give somebody another chance, except for maybe Christopher Priest at this point. And so I'm just going into these books with an open mind, and it just feels like he's a little bit more connected to continuity, but not in as slavish a way. I think a lot of my critique of Mark Guggenheim in the past was that he was just playing the hits of other people's writing, and he was TV writing for actors that didn't exist. And so it just felt like everything read flat and everything was an imitation. Maybe now he's having a different approach. People grow, people change. People grow, people change. Novarg hates when titles use flashbacks to establish characters that are 60 years old. The new Superman title did the same. But to be fair, the new Superman book, Superman's origins in a post-Flashpoint, post-Rebirth, post-Doomsday Clock, post-Infinite Frontier world are very confusing. I think many DC characters could use that, but Mark Waid's about to do that in his Secret History of the DC Universe, so I don't know that we needed Dan Slott. And again, Dan Slott writes a lot of good comic books, not who I would choose to clarify continuity for me necessarily. Cure said, what? It was while I was screaming about something, but who knows? And that was some rant, Novarg says. The only good thing about the current Star Wars is that it's so bad now that it got such a good rant, which is the best thing current Star Wars pulled off. Well, I like the Charles Soule book, and I guardedly like the Mark Guggenheim book. I just think High Republic has such a high pedigree from the original High Republic through novels, through comics, and it never got its full due because the fullness of the media never made it there. And I think everybody was just hoping for so much for High Republic now that they kind of like full court press went into it for a few years, and it kind of just flopped. Like the comic books were not that good. The TV show only made it one season. So it kind of is like, again, one of these things where we all know that the classic thing exists. And in this case, everybody's like, okay, well, we know it's going to be new, but at least could it be good? And I don't even think people are comparing it to the classic High Republic. I think it's just like, just not good. I think that's where it is. All right, so a lot of people had to get going. Yeah, this is a much later time than usual, so I understand that people have lives. And Novark, I did manage to retain, at least for 3 days, that character in your profile picture is named L. So my mnemonic is working so far. James Abel says, Ultimate 12, this was okay, but not great. I was missing something. Okay, so it wasn't just me. I'm not coming here for you to validate me. That would be a boring echo chamber. I'm perfectly happy when you all want to fight me about everything I want to say, but it is nice to occasionally be validated. Next to Paginot, it's not great. Adrian Montana is saying, I wonder if Ultimate Invasion will make more sense when the Ultimate Universe Maker event happens. Oh, see, I'm not up to Ultimate Universe Maker event. Well, next to Paginot, that's because 90%, oh, you mean 90% of the Ultimate books? Because I loved this week. Not 90% of the books this week. I was rabid with praise for this week. Okay. James Abel, Wonder Woman 21. Give me more of Wonder Woman and Batman working together. Their friendship is great. Yeah, I want more Brave and the Bold Wonder Woman and Batman. Like, I think we have so few Wonder Woman and Batman team-ups. They pair up really well, especially in the modern day. Like, get me some more of that action. Let's do more of that. Yeah. And Eric Garza, I'm giving it a shot. If a comic book really enrages me in a way that feels unhealthy for me to scream about, which some things are fun to scream about. Sometimes I feel it like getting into my personal life, how angry I am about it. That's when I step away. But if I can identify that it's just a certain artist, or it's just a certain approach, or it's just a certain character, it's just a certain arc, then I know I can try back later, right? So Christopher Priest with Barbarella, I think that one makes me a little too upset. I think I've just got to step away. It's not even worth it for the comedy value. It's really upsetting me. But with King, like maybe now that we're out of his big thesis statement arc and we're just into shorter Wonder Woman stories, maybe they're going to be really good. Maybe they're going to be really good. Jamie C47 saying, I love Zatanna #4. Beautiful art, fantastic panel work, and I'm really connecting emotionally. Yeah, that's the thing. She feels like she exists as an emotional character in a way that she often doesn't. Great Gonzo bought out of Alcatraz at my LCS as I pitched it. Well, I hope you really like it because I am feeling it big. Bunkmaster, we're not, how dare you, sir? I'm not at the 3-hour mark yet. You're going to give me time dysmorphia, okay? I have 20 more seconds before I'm at the 3-hour arc. Kid Crisis is absolutely not standing on a street corner in torrential rain. You know, one of these days, I think it'll break everything this day, but one of these days I am going to take you on the road because this rain that we have outside of my window right now, for just like a random afternoon, which is normal New Zealand rain, it is apocalyptic, which is a Drag Race joke, by the way. I know how to say apocalyptic. I had a song that had the word apocalyptic in it that I had to say all the time. Apocalyptic is a Drag Race joke. Who originated it? I can't remember the queen's name. She wore a bubblegum thing on her head. I'm sorry, it'll come to me. Logan Wayne. Okay, we're wrapping up now, though. Did you see that Marvel has added a lot more to the forthcoming Black Panther Omni? Yes, not the Vibranium Vendetta, and not those 2 issues from Excalibur, which I think they should have, but lots of cool Bronze Age stuff that was otherwise not going to be in his line. Also, did you see? This might be embargoed because it's an Omar thing, and I'm a member. I'm a member and also a host on Near Mint Edition. They significantly changed the contents of that Kelly Thompson Captain Marvel omnibus, and it might be why they held it back for as long as they did, but I cannot say why. I cannot explain. Okay. People aren't getting notifications. I don't know. I can't control the innards of YouTube. But you need to get going. Everybody's got to get going. It's 3 o'clock at night for some people. It's 3 hours and 1 second for me. I'm just going to play the beginning of the intro song again to redeem myself from, I've never biffed it that bad. But this has been Crisis with a K. You can find me on crushingcrisis.com and on Patreon, which is, I'm going to do more stuff for, but all of this stuff is for Patreon. And all of the guides on my site that are Patreon only are for Patreon. But there's new content to come. I'm going to be on Near Mint Condition tomorrow night at 6 o'clock talking about Superman Evergreen. Then we'll be right back here, I think, on the normal time on Sunday to keep catching up on the pull list. And so, until then, please don't have a crisis unless it's me. Treat people well in the world. And if you see them in crisis, I'm a fun crisis. Many of the other kinds of crisis are not as fun. So help a person out. Have a great day, night, whatever time zone you may be in. Take care, y'all.